We discussed the surplus distribution of RBI last class. Banking, I could not discuss the structure. I'll just give you a brief overview. Huh? ये तो इतनी देर से बैठे थे, बाहर ही थे. Okay, so I'll just give you a brief overview of the structure of banking so that the document which I've given to you is you understand the regulations. Regulation and financial inclusion, these two are important components which UPSC has been traditionally asking questions from. Banking related development, that is in the current affairs, that is also a probable question. If in last 1.5 years there has been some development in banking sector, but otherwise a conventional sector is banking, where you'll have structure of banking, regulation of banking, and also your this financial inclusion policies. These three things are traditionally which are covered. I'll just give you a brief overview. What is the structure of bank? We have scheduled banks and non-scheduled banks. What is the difference? What is the difference between scheduled and non-scheduled banks? What? Then these are not non-scheduled, are not under banking regulation. Regulation दोनों का है. Scheduled and non-scheduled both are regulated. It's not about regulation. It's about what type of facilities they can get from RBI. Any bank having an initial capital of 5 crore or 5 lakh. You just check once. Don't remember exactly. 5 crore or 5 lakh is the initial condition for starting a bank. And the second is they should act in the interest of depositors. If they are not in the interest of depositors, so what actually happens is, first anyone who wants to open up a bank has to set up an NBFC, a bank holding company, after which they are given the banking license and they can transition to the bank. So what the RBI sees is, if they are in the interest of depositors, they will be mentioned in the Schedule 2 of the RBI. So there are two conditions. One is the minimum capital condition and the second is the interest of depositors. That means most of the banks that are opened up in the country, they will eventually come under scheduled banks only. Because if they are in the interest of the depositors, they will have to be brought here. Non-scheduled banks, in 1996, there was a special category of banks that were started, which the Act itself said, the Local Area Bank Act, said these would be not in the second schedule of the RBI Act. So these are the special banks which would be opened up in rural or semi-urban areas and operate in 1 to 3 contiguous districts. There are roughly 4 or 5 local area banks in the country also. So idea of local area bank was that we need to spread the banking activity to the rural sectors. So this would be a non-scheduled bank. This was written in the Act itself, okay? They will not be in the schedule. Now any bank which is in the schedule, what are the benefits they get? There are two benefits which they are going to get. One, they are going to get the liquidity adjustment facility of the RBI. There is no discretion of the RBI. You are going to get the LF, which we discussed in the last class. And second, they will be part of the clearing house, where clearing settlement will be available to them. Both the clearing house and liquidity adjustment facility is without a condition. For non-scheduled banks, it is on the discretion of the RBI to give these facilities to them or not. It's not that these facilities cannot be given to them, but it is on discretion of RBI. What is a clearing house? Clearing house is the central counterparty. What is the meaning of the central counterparty? Whenever any particular transaction has to be settled, where A has to make a payment for B, how do we know that B is actually going to make the payment and the account is going to be settled in both ways? That means a very simple transaction. A wants to sell security to B and B is to pay money to them. How do they trust each other whether this transaction is going to be settled or not? Whether the counterparty is going to pay the amount or fulfill his part of the obligation or not. The counterparty fulfilling the part of the obligation is what we call as these consequent party in a particular contract. Now in order to create this trust, the RBI has created a central counterparty which they call as the Clearing Corporation of India Limited. This Clearing Corporation of India Limited is what performs the role of this clearing house. They are the ones which will create this trust that you are selling to us, and they are going to deposit money to us. That means they are the ones which will clear and settle the transactions. This central counterparty established by the RBI, 100% owned by the RBI, is the Clearing Corporation of India Limited. So its membership is automatic to scheduled banks. LAF is automatic to scheduled banks, but it is on discretion to the non-scheduled banks. And when we say LAF, we are also talking about the rediscount facility. So for scheduled banks, you get these two automatically, that is borrowing and lending with the borrowing and deposit facilities with the RBI. And second is that you get the clearing house automatic. Clearing house is someone which settles the transactions for the two, which is the central counterparty to these transactions. For money, foreign exchanges, government securities, the clearing house is the Clearing Corporation of India Limited. Now, what are the types of banks which are scheduled? There are two types of banks in the country. Second schedule, not of Constitution, Act 1934. It's okay, कोई नहीं. So सुबह 11 बजे थोड़ा सा AC नहीं चल रहा था, दिमाग थोड़ा. Now there are two types of banks depending on their structure and their formation. One is called your commercial banks. Both of them we are talking about scheduled only. The other are cooperatives. What is the difference between the two? Scheduled or commercial banks are those which work for a profit basis, and they are worked as per the management, that is the shareholders are the ones which decide whatever the management would be. That means this bank work as per the and their objective, whatever they want to achieve with the bank. Whereas cooperative banks are member-owned societies which are democratically managed. That means each member has one vote in the particular management of this particular structure. The idea was, since the commercial banks was mostly have a profit motive, commercial banks can be owned by the government also. So there the objective will change. But management is decided by the shareholders depending on whatever is their contribution to the total capital. If government is owning these banks, that means the government can decide its own objective. But in case of cooperative banks, it is a member-owned society which is democratically run, where each member has one vote. Benefit of this is loans are primarily given to its members who have contributed to its share capital. Loan is provided to the members, whereas deposits are open for all. This is what is a cooperative bank. In certain cases, the cooperative banks can be allowed to give loans to beyond members also. There are exceptional cases, but this can also happen. But in general, why these cooperative banks were opened up? Because these members or certain people were being excluded from the commercial banking system, because the commercial banking system is a profit-oriented business. This is why cooperatives were formed. And cooperative has a long history. It was before independence also, because mostly the commercial banks before independence were only private sector banks. Now coming to the structure of this, the commercial banks in the country are of multiple types. They can be owned by the government. They are public sector banks, and they can also be private banks and foreign banks. The public sector banks include the three nationalization which the government had done. One was SBI in 1955, SBI Nationalization Act. The other was 14 banks in 1969 and 6 banks in 1980. There were 2 more banks or 1 more bank which was created in 2014 but then merged with SBI. That was the Bharatiya Mahila Bank. One of the things which you need to remember here or know the differences, I've given this all in the PPT also, that the regulation of public sector banks is slightly different from other banks in the country. Public sector banks, because they were created by acts of the parliament, there are certain features of these banks which are not present in public sector. What are those features? Since these public sector banks are government owned, there is some regulation by government along with the regulation of RBI. Though RBI regulates all banks in the country under the Banking Regulation Act of 1949. But there are some acts, or there are some banks which have been created by the Government Nationalization Act. So there are some powers which the government holds over these banking system. Apart from the banking functions which I've given in the document, the governance functions which the government controls over them is that the chairman, directors, they cannot be removed by RBI. They can only recommend. Not just removed, they can't be disciplined. There can be no disciplinary action by the central bank. Also, the central bank cannot close down these banks or ask for its merger liquidation with any other bank. Liquidation means close down of the bank, or merger acquisition with any other bank. These facilities are available for all type of banks with the RBI. Removing officers, punishing officers, the removal, the close down of the bank, merger acquisition of the bank, resolution of a bank, all of these things can be done by the RBI for all banks in the country, apart from public sector banks. Why? Because they were created through the act of the Parliament, the Nationalization Act, which gives them the overriding power to the government. Then we have private banks. Private banks, mostly before 91, did not exist in the country, where there were very few small private banks existing, hardly 3 or 4. Private banks were mostly given licenses after 1991. The first major licensing activity happened in 1993, where 10 private banks were given licenses. The second activity happened in 2003-04, where 2 banks, Axis and this one. ICICI was first, 10 में मिल गया था ICICI. The 2 were HDFC also before. 2003-04 there were 2. Axis and Yes Bank. These were the 2. Then in 2014 there were 2 more licenses which were given. Out of these 10 there were some banks which were closed down also. There are I think 6 or 7 only remaining. 2 in 2014 was IDFC First Bank and Bandhan. Now what they have done is, no longer will we come out with a notification for banks in the country. There is on-tap licensing. If you fulfill the conditions, in 2016 the RBI introduced this particular guideline where banks in the country can be opened up without waiting for the notification. Whenever you want to apply, you can apply. This is the meaning of on-tap licensing. Before that, the RBI used to come out with a notification, then only the banks could apply for a license. Now it's no longer the case. The only one exception is companies which have assets more than 5,000 crore rupees. They cannot apply for a banking license. We do not allow large corporates to open banks in the country. So any particular company which has net assets of more than 5,000 crore rupees, they will not be allowed to open a bank in the country, because we believe there would be connected lending, since if this bigger company is coming up for operations. So this is the only exception. Anyhow, if all the other conditions are met, you can apply for a banking license in the country. Then there are foreign banks. There are 2 types of foreign banks. One is branch-led expansion, where you're not opening up a bank itself, you're just opening a bank branch of an international bank in the country. The second is wholly owned subsidiary. The idea of wholly owned subsidiary is that you have to open up a company in India and then you can start banking operations. Post, or in fact 2007-08, when there were too many financial crises, or there were potential for creating crisis because of the intense globalization that was happening, the RBI said we are now going to do most of this. They wanted to encourage more wholly owned subsidiaries. 3 years back, or I think 2 years back, UPSC asked a question on wholly owned subsidiary, that 50% of the board members of the wholly owned subsidiary should be Indian nationals. The guideline said it is not just 50% Indian nationals, it could be 50% any of the 3. This is what was wholly owned subsidiary for foreign banks. These are all types of banks which are full banks. You should know certain basic regulation of all this banking system. For example, is FPI or FDI allowed in these banking systems? This one statement on regulation, if you know the structure, you should have an idea. Now if FDI allowed in any of these banks, ek to 100% hi ho gaya. Are FDI allowed in private banks or FDI allowed in foreign public sector banks in the country? See, these are the types of regulations which you should know. These facts I've given, I'll give you more I'll check. I think I've given most of it. If still I'm absent, I'll add another document. Public sector banks में 20% FD allowed है. Private banks में 74% allowed है, जिसमें से 49% is automatic. Then it is approval route. This is what is your broader idea of the banking system in terms of full banks. Full banks means providing all three services. There are certain category of banks which are again commercial, but they are not full-fledged banks. What do we mean by they are not full-fledged banks? That means they are differentiated banks or niche banks. What do we mean by differentiation or niche banks? There were two particular things that happened in the Indian economy. One happened in 1976 and the other happened in 2014. In 1976, when we were spreading the banking system, the idea was we are going to spread the banking system only through public sector banks, and they are going to start opening branches. So the government nationalized the Imperial Bank of India in 1955, that was SBI, nationalized 6 associates of the SBI in 1960, and in 1969, those having 50 crores or more of deposits were nationalized in 1969. But this model was also facing a problem because alone public sector banks could not spread themselves, and even if they were spreading themselves to areas, they were not making loans to people who were actually in need. That means rural areas, especially agriculture and MSMEs, were not getting a lot of loans. Priority sector lending was introduced in 1974, but the features of priority sector lending and their targets are not yet set by the government. Idea start ho gaya tha 74 mein, but the features and also the limits came up later. So that means 1975, we do not have a lot of loans being given to agriculture or the smaller industries, especially in the rural areas. So what the government thought was that if public sector banks are not able to spread or they are not giving loans to rural or agriculture areas, sectors, what can give loans is the cooperative banks. But the problem with cooperative banks is, if you compare the structure of the two banking system, most of the deposits will come with the commercial bank and not with the cooperative bank, because they are member-owned societies and loan goes to the member. So you have higher cases of default that can happen in cooperative banks. Since it's a closed society, member-run society, member are getting loans. So the trust level in cooperatives might be low for anyone outside the member group. So that means if the public has to make deposits, they will be choosing PSBs more over the cooperatives. Now cooperative had a problem that they did not have significant amount of capital which they could lend out to people. So I have a problem where PSBs have money but don't want to give because they don't understand the need, they don't understand the requirement. The cooperative bank understand the requirement, but cooperative banks don't have the money for it. So based on this particular structure, to use the benefits of both, the government created the regional rural banks through an act of the parliament in 1976. This was based on the Narsimham working group. What this Narsimham working group said, that you can create a structure which is hybrid. Hybrid means takes the benefit of this and the benefit of this both, pass an act and create certain features which take the benefit here. What were the features which they added? First, in order to provide them capital as par with what the public sector banks have, they said the RRB should get money from center states and a sponsor bank, and this sponsor bank should be a public sector banks. So whatever these Grameen banks have been created, these RRBs are backed by a public sector bank. They said in 1976, this ratio should be, that means now they are well capitalized, but how do I make them give the benefits of working in the rural areas? They added two conditions here. First, the RRB is going to be defined to the area as specified by the government of India. That means the central government is going to specify where these banks will operate. There is an area restriction. And second, they will have to give loans to this. Priority sector lending will now become 70. Primarily loans will happen here. Post this only we are creating conditions for priority sector loans. I'll tell you how priority sector loans have also changed. Last year there was a master directions which consolidated all priority sector lending. We have to talk about it because last 5 years there have been 2 questions I think on priority sector loans itself. Now I have created a bank which is capital coming from these 3 sources and area restriction and priority sector lending going. That means my exposure to the target group is more. This is what is called as a type of differentiated bank. a type of differentiated bank because this bank was targeting a particular sector, a particular geography. Geography, the area will be specified by the government, and the loans being given to a particular area, 75% is your private sector loan. The other type of differentiation that can happen is, differentiation can happen on the scope of activities to be performed. A full universal bank performs all three activities for everyone. There's no specific target or specific geography. If I create it on specific target or geography, I can create one type of differentiated bank. If I create it on some activities, there's a second type of differentiation of banks. That means the full bank has to face the complete regulation and might not be covering smaller areas, smaller geographies, and might not cover some of the activities. In order to make it more focused, I can differentiate the bank either on the target sector or on the target geography, or I can take it on target activities. The three fundamental activities of a bank are, they can do payments, they can do loans, and they can do deposit. Out of the three, I can create differentiation by picking any of the two, any of the one. Not all three. All three is what is fundamentally a bank is doing. 2014, Nachiket More Committee for Financial Inclusion said that you need to add certain banks which help the people who are moving from one state to another state for work. So when they have to send money back home, there is a lot of payment issues. There are a lot of money which gets wasted in sending the money back home. That means help them solve two problems. Give them a payment solution and give them a remittance solution. And this payment and remittance solution should be low cost and in a safe and secure environment. You can add on technology in order to provide these two. Technology-based low-cost solutions for payment and remittances. That means remove this particular criteria. So when we started with payment and deposits, the RBI started giving licenses for payment banks. Payment banks cannot do loans, deposits up to 2 lakh rupees, remittance facilities, payment facilities is what they can provide. The second type of this was not on activity, it was again on the sector which we were targeting. This was based on first 2008, the Raghuram committee report, 1000 small steps. He was talking about universal-led banking system is not spreading banking. There should be differentiated banking. Based on his recommendation in 2014, the government started or the RBI started distributing licenses for small finance banks. So I have three types of full banks: public sector, private sector, foreign, and three types of differentiated banks. One is called as RRB, the other is payment bank, and the third is small finance bank. Small finance bank do not have a regulation on area. ये exist नहीं करता. This is the differentiating factor between RRB and small finance bank. But they have to target the specific priority sector loans, which last year they converted to 60%. Earlier it was not 60%, it was 75%. Now they have converted to 60%. Second thing they have said is that 50% of their loans will be of amount less than 25 lakh rupees. 50% of the loan books is going to be smaller loans. This means I am going to target unserved and underserved sections of the society. All of these 6 category of banks are scheduled commercial banks. One small change that happened in 2015. Now, small finance banks are equal to RRB mostly. RRB के ऊपर area limitation भी है, and their investment is also constrained by the 3 sources which they have given. That means they were not able to raise money from outside sources. And secondly, they had significant exposure to the target area, and also the area could not be otherwise where the deposits became a problem for them. So that means even before the starting of small finance bank, RRB was a problem. RRB was facing a lot of issues. So what the government did post 91, the government has been consistently merging the RRB banks with the public sector banks itself. And now last year the government said we will have one state, one RRB. This is in continuation with the merger. 190 से 96 लेके आए till 2010, then 2010 से 2015 से we brought it to 45. Now we are saying from 45 to now we are making only 28. Another change which they made here was the RRB is going to have, this particular is something which will not stand true anymore. The act was amended in 2015 and the center and sponsor bank maximum have to have 51%, rest you can raise from any other source. So the ownership pattern of the RRB was changed in order to let them generate sources from other than the sponsor bank and the center. The sponsor bank in this case is again the public sector bank only. Over the RBI does not have direct control. Most of the supervision power over the RRB is given to the NABARD. It's called as supervisory power, not regulatory power. Regulatory power is still the RBI. Since RBI is short on resources, RBI has delegated this responsibility over certain banks to NABARD. I'll show you more sources from where it has done. So you have 6 types of banks in the country: RRB, payment banks, small finance bank, and the 3 which I told you was public sector banks, private banks, and foreign banks. These 6 banks, you should have a broader idea about their regulation, because these regulation based questions have been asked a number of times in the exam. This is the structure of public sector banks. Now the other structure is, what is your cooperative bank? Cooperative bank, there were 2 changes made in 2020, and both these changes were asked in the same year. Banking ke hamesha these 2 type of questions: structure, regulation, and inclusion. And the third is, any development happened in 1 year, that is a potential question. This is one of the favorite topics for the exam. Cooperative banks have 2 structures. One is the urban cooperatives and the other are rural cooperatives. One thing about the cooperative banks is, cooperative banks are registered under the State Cooperative Act, and if they are in multiple states, they are under the Multi-State Cooperative Act, which is under the center. That means its incorporation, its management, its regulation over management is done by the state or the center government. It is not done by the RBI. That means cooperative banks will always have a dual regulatory structure, apart from some banks which do not get covered under the regulation. Most of them are dual regulation: RBI for banking functions, and for the first time banking functions over urban cooperatives was brought through an amendment in 1966. The latest amendment that has happened in 2020, which said that rural cooperative, primary agriculture credit societies, is not under the ambit of RBI. PACs will not be under RBI. PACs are under the State Cooperative Act only. Secondly, urban cooperative banks are free to raise money from issuing shares. Shares and preference shares से वो पैसे और ले सकते हैं. This was the condition given to them in 2020. Urban cooperative banks are also called as primary cooperative banks. I've given you some regulations of the urban cooperative banks. It's also a layered structure. And second, the prompt corrective action. I'll tell you prompt corrective action today. Prompt corrective action are 3 types. One is for scheduled banks, the other is for urban cooperative banks, and the third is for NBFCs. The indicators and the steps are completely different. In 2020, the prompt corrective action was introduced for cooperative banks. In the year 2021, it was introduced for NBFCs. And the regulation said government-owned NBFCs will start coming under this prompt corrective action from 2024. So these are some of the developments. I'll tell you what first prompt corrective action is. So urban mein primary cooperative bank, this is completely under RBI through the Banking Regulation Acts and also through the state government. State government or center government, its management functions. Rural cooperatives has 2 types of structure. One is short-term lending and the other are called as long-term lending, and these are called as land development banks. Short-term lending mein what exactly are the structure? It is a 3-tier structure where you have primary agriculture credit society, you have district central cooperative bank and state central cooperative bank. It's a 3-tiered structure. That means they help in refinancing of the next level. This gives money to them so that they can give loans to their members. This gives money to them so that they can give loans. Who gives them the money? They get help from. Supervisory power of these 2 are with NABARD. This particular is not in the banking regulation structure. NABARD is what regulates them, is for short-term loans. For land development banks, there are primary cooperative, agriculture, rural development bank or land development bank, state cooperative, agriculture, rural development bank or land development bank. What is peculiar about this? These are not included under RBI. Why? Because these 2 structures, they do not accept deposits. They give loan for 10-15 years for development of land. That means for long time duration, for infrastructure development, especially in the rural areas. They get money from NABARD. NABARD, they issue bonds to NABARD and NABARD gives them money. Mostly they raise money by issuing bonds to the people at large. Most of the money actually comes from NABARD. NABARD को debenture or bond issue करता है और उसको वो पैसे देता है, which वो they can lend further. But since they do not take any deposits, RBI has no role over them. Even NABARD का जो role है over them, it does not come from the act. That is, RBI is not giving them this supervisory control. It is voluntary which they are doing. This type of structure is completely outside because they do not accept deposits. RBI has mainly concern with those structures which are accepting deposits. These two plus this. And this also RBI is not doing directly, RBI is doing it through NABARD. I've given you the regulations, you just read about the regulations, you understand the structure, what is of the cooperative banks. Another, yes. Supervise करता है, word regulate नहीं होगा कहीं पे भी, supervise करेगा because RBI has limited resources. If your RBI is spending all of its resources in monitoring this structure, automatically resources become less. So if they given this supervisory role, the targets हमने set कर दिए, आप इनको day to day monitor या monthly quarterly पे you check whether they are fulfilling their limits or not. So the supervisory of smaller banks, I told you, one smaller bank is the local area bank. And then there is a smaller bank which is RRB, smaller bank which are rural cooperatives. The तीनों case में I have told you, this is NABARD role, this is NABARD role, and RRB also I told you it's a supervisory NABARD role. Given to NABARD in order to supervise, target setting and loan, everything monitoring will be done by the bank itself. This is why urban cooperatives ka complete control RBI ke paas hai, because the structure is big and they take deposits from the public. Is this clear? The other type, or first we'll discuss the priority sector loans itself. What is priority sector loan? What type of a regulation is priority sector loan? वो होता क्या वो नहीं. What type of a regulation this is? I told you money supply or monetary policy can have two types of tools. One tool which we have already discussed is quantitative tool. What is the meaning of quantitative tool? Quantitative tool may we discussed, I discussed only one. One is reserves, the other is liquidity adjustment, and the other is, I discussed these two in the last class. Specific features of liquidity adjustment facility and open market operations. Beyond this, we also have one types of tool, that is qualitative. What are qualitative tools? Quantitative tools impact the supply of money in the economy. That means they have an impact on the volume of money in the economy. Qualitative tools do not impact the volume. Qualitative they impact the direction. What are the examples of qualitative tools? एक तो है कि just tell them कि please give loans to these activities. Please is moral suasion. What else? Direct is anyhow RBI can directly say anything. So that is not a significant tool. Before that, there are 2-3 tools which are important. One is margin requirement. Margin requirement is how much of the loan the value you are going to get. If you are going to give 100%, so value of the house is 80 lakh rupees, you're not going to get a complete loan as financed. This is what is loan to value. Loan to value is nothing but margin. Kitna bank finance karega? 75%, 50% of the collateral which you are giving. The other is credit rationing. Credit rationing is limiting the supply. Limit how much loan can be given to particular activities or particular sector. Ration means limiting the supply. And the tool which I wanted to discuss, that is the priority sector loan. This is called as selective credit control. Selective credit control is the direction in which the credit is going to go with respect to the activities. Priority sector lending is an example of selective credit control, introduced in the country for the first time in 1974. This type of a condition you could have introduced only when you had control over the banks, because you can't change the conditions before the banks were established. This is why nationalized bank ka fayda ye hua ke you can give them the priority sector loan targets. Now, what are the priority sector loan categories? First, this is the applicability of priority sector loans. It applies to commercial banks, including the foreign banks. Foreign banks, I told you, are mostly established through wholly owned subsidiaries, not through the bank branch-led mechanism. Regional rural banks, we just discussed, small finance, local area, primary cooperatives, and the foreign banks operating in India. This is bank branches operating in India, wholly owned subsidiary. These are the two forms of foreign banks in the country. This is your total target. Total priority sector lending target is 40% of adjusted net bank credit. That means all loans minus interbank loans. This is what is the target which has been set. Agriculture has to be given 18%, out of which 14% has to be given to non-corporate farmers and 10% to small and marginal farmers. 7.5 to micro enterprises. UPSC last to last year asked this question. All MSME loans are priority sector loans or not? This statement was correct. All MSME loans are priority sector. In fact, micro enterprises ka usme MSME mein, the micro has a target for 7.5. Weaker sections have to be given 12%. This is what is the cumulative target. For bank branches less than 20, 40% is the total target, but the sub-sector target is 32 for export and 8 for other priority areas. For less than 20 branches, 32% has to be export credit. Small finance bank, I told you, it's 60% is the target, not 75% anymore. Last year it was revised, brought down from 75 to 60. For regional rural banks, since we are targeting a particular sector, it is 75% of total. 18% agriculture, 7.5. Weaker section target is 15% as opposed to 12% which was for normal banks. Urban cooperative banks, 60%. They had a phased program for them. They said first we'll give them 40, then we'll give them 60, and eventually we're going to bring them to 75. Right now the present target is 60% for urban cooperative banks. It was a phased program for priority sector loans for urban cooperatives. We started with 40 to bring them to 60 and then eventually bring them to 75. Right now the target for urban cooperative banks is this. What can be counted? Farm credit, just go over these particular heads so that you know what exactly is counted under all of these 8. First, in agriculture, eligible borrowers can be given up sub-loan for these activities. What is important here is this. Corporate farmers can get loans and this one. Agriculture infrastructure can get loans. Agriculture infrastructure where you have storage facilities, soil conservation, plant tissue culture, biopesticide, biofuel processing units and this. This is important because these criteria you would always take a guess in the exam also that individual what is allowed, what is not allowed. This is what was important, that infrastructure and ancillary activities where startups in agriculture up to 50 crores are also eligible. Food and agro processing units up to 100 crore per borrower. That means large farmers are also included for activities which seem long-term in nature. They are also part of priority sector loans. The small and marginal farmers definition, because they have a target of 10%, marginal is up to 1 hectare, small is 1 to 2 hectares. These are the definition based on which you will classify the 10% limit for which you have to give. Micro and small, similarly, the inclusions, what will count. Factoring transactions are also part of this. I told you what is factoring. Factoring is invoice-based lending, where you have not got the money. I told you yesterday also, this is the trade factoring transaction are also counted here. We discussed this factoring technique. MSME, delivering the goods and services to another corporate and they are not paying money. This is invoice is generated, which can be converted into a trade bill or a commercial bill. Based on this invoice, a loan can be generated from a bank or from NBFC. This particular invoice-based lending is what is called as factoring business. Why factoring business is a significant activity in India? Because MSME's biggest bottleneck for their operations is delayed payments. Delayed payments is what compromises their increase in skill or bringing in technology from outside. This delayed payments ke problem ko solve karne ke liye is what we have created this factoring business. NBFCs which deal only in this particular type of an activity are called as NBFC factors. I'll tell you the differentiation of NBFC also. How exactly based on activity and regulation they are counted. This factoring activity to be promoted, the government has started a trade receivable e-discounting system. This is a platform where you can participate. This budget I think made a reference to TREDS this year. That TREDS maybe are going to make some changes. TREDS, factoring, all of these are terms which have been mentioned, and factoring business gets counted under MSME loans. Apart from MSME, what are the other sectors? Agriculture and MSME. Beyond that, what is included under priority sector loans? You have export credit, which is the third biggest component here. Export credit, different types of loans being covered. Then is education loan. Education loan has a limit of up to 25 lakh rupees. These are the broader conditions for education loan. Then you have, apart from education, you also have housing. For purchase of construction, there is a limit depending on the city type, and also there are limits depending on repairs to units or other housing loans. There have been exemptions also. Exemptions are loan to bank employees, loan to long-term bonds, and even the investments in NHB, which the Urban Cooperative Bank does. These are the exceptions which will not be counted under housing. Beyond housing, you have social infrastructure. Social infrastructure includes 3 types of activities: schools, drinking water, sanitation, healthcare facilities, and water and sanitation activities. In this, an important is MFI own lending. What is microfinance? What is the meaning of microfinance? Microfinance can be given by banks, can be given by NBFCs. In fact, NBFCs register themselves only to deal with microfinance activities. These are called as NBFC MFIs. Earlier, the RBI said NBFC MFIs will be given a license for microfinance if the 75% of their exposure is to microfinance. Now they have last year reduced it to 60%. The activity NBFC will be categorized as NBFC MFI when they are giving 60% of their loans to microfinance sector. What is meaning of microfinance? 2010-11 they used to ask a lot of questions on microfinance. What is this activity, microfinance? Chote business. What do you mean by chote business? Microfinance includes all types of activities. It includes micro deposit, small deposit, micro insurance, micro loans, micro payments. Micro loan, what the condition here is, according to the RBI regulation, micro credit is a loan which is given to a family, both in urban. Earlier there was different limits for rural areas and urban areas, 1.6 lakh and 2 lakh rupees. Now they said the annual income of the family should not be more than 3 lakh rupees. Loans given to them is 3 lakh rupees. RBI does not have a regulation on the limit of loan. What they say is the loan repayment, what they have to do in a particular month, unki EMI aayegi in a particular month, that month EMI should not be more than 50% of their income of that month. This is the limit which is actually then the limit on the loan. That your EMI should not be more than 50% of the income which you earn in a particular month. Otherwise, MFIs don't have a loan limit, how much loan they can take, but who will be given this loan? That is families having annual income of 3 lakh rupees. What is special about this loan? This loan has no collateral. You don't have to give any guarantee or security. These are small ticket loans. In order to provide these facilities, loan pe there are restrictions. Now there is one type of an organization. Sometimes what the sectors do, they create a self-regulating organization. They come together. For example, you have seen ads of mutual funds. Who's doing these ads? Who's doing this ad? Like, how can Sachin is doing this ad? Number of known celebrities are doing these ads. Who is doing that? They are not promoting mutual funds of one particular trust. They are in general saying that you should have acceptability of mutual funds, SIP, subject to market risk. को last में जब बोलते हैं वो किसकी ad है? Do you think SEBI will make an ad like this? Do you think a regulator will say? RBI कहेगा जानकार रहें, सतर्क रहें कि गड़बड़ हो रही है तो वो ध्यान रहो. But mutual fund सही है क्यों बोलेंगे? This is one step ahead. This is a self-regulating organizations of mutual funds. There's an association. The mutual fund association is what creates this ad so that more products come to them. For example, Karol Bagh is a market of number of different products. तो यहाँ पे जो मोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरर्स हैं उन्होंने अपनी एसोसिएशन बना ली और वो ऐड कर रहे हैं मोबाइल फोन खरीदो. Not a one brand, but खरीदो हमारा बिजनेस होता है. So these self-regulating organizations is a network of mutual fund, this microfinance also. It's called as the microfinance network. They are self-regulating bodies. For all of them, they have created one association. The association says कि loan की limit होनी चाहिए 2 लाख की. This is done by the self-regulating organization itself. This self-regulating organization says 2 lakh rupees, not RBI. RBI says follow this. RBI has other regulations also for microfinance कि repayment, prepayment penalty नहीं लगेगी. If the loan is being closed before the time period, there will be no penalty. And if the payment is late payment, the interest will only apply on the late payment, not on the entire amount. So there are some regulations to protect the microfinance. Broadly, it is Loan given to families without a collateral. Family income should be 3 lakh rupees. Loan limit does not exist. Loan limit is done by the organization itself. This is what is your microfinance. NBFC microfinance institutions are those which have 60% exposure to this, not 75 anymore. Social, then renewable energy, individuals up to 10 lakh rupees, others apart from individuals up to 35 lakh rupees. All the 8 heads, just have a broad idea what is included. You don't have to memorize anything, because if you have a broad idea, you will be able to pick up the right answer because the statement mentions everything. Others, microfinance loans, this is what we're talking about. Self-help group and joint lending group. Last year they had asked a question, who takes the responsibility of the loan in self-help group? And who takes the responsibility of the loan in joint lending group? What is the difference? What is self-help group? Was it about lending? Was the self-help group created about lending? This is not started by NABARD in 1982. In fact, that question said it was started by SBI. The question of UPSC said the self-help group lending model or self-help group model for financial inclusion was started by SBI. It was not SBI, it was NABARD which started this program 1980s. 1982 to NABARD ही बना था, उसके बाद से they started this activity. And self-help group bank linkage became famous. But what's this idea? It was never a loan activity in the first. They said, start a group and inculcate an habit of save first. Through this savings, you can talk about starting of an economic activity, and if this saving is less, the second step would be to get a loan from a bank. The group was created for this particular purpose, then it was linked to the bank for loans. The lending activity would be better for the bank because individual people were not repaying. Repayment rates are higher because it's a peer network, peer group, which is going to create a pressure for repayment. Because the loan which the bank has given, the loan is in the name of the self-help group, which is again registered as a cooperative society. See, NGO और बाकी सब activity cooperatives ही हैं. बैंक का cooperative was different, this cooperative is different, every cooperative has different. Registrar इनका वही होगा, Registrar of State Cooperatives Act rules apply to them. So they've registered themselves here. On the registration and doing savings for a certain period of time, they are eligible for a loan. Getting this loan, this bank could be any particular bank. Who helps or who forces the banks for refinancing and giving out these loans is NABARD. UPSC's favorite question in before 2020 in mains, because this is the most effective poverty alleviation technique. In order to create self-employment where the repayment rates are high, was the self-help group's bank linkage program. Liabilities of the entire group because the loan comes in the name of the group. The other type of an activity is, in this case, it is saving first, loan second. But if I directly create a group in order to create or get a loan from the bank, this is loan first, not saving first. That was saving first, loan for an economic activity. This group directly taking from a bank where say 5 members are part. Every member is taking a loan of 10,000 rupees. Now this particular group taking from the bank, the liability becomes joint. This is what is called as a joint liability group. इसमें बैंक एक agreement sign करता है. यहाँ पे तो बैंक ने directly self-help group को loan दे दिया. That is in the name of the cooperative society, the loan exists. So every member has to now give the loan back. The responsibilities of every member because the group is taking the loan. Here individual is taking the loan as part of the group. So what the bank signs an agreement is, 10,000 की liability group की भी है और 10,000 की liability member की भी है. What do you mean by this? If one member defaults, does not pay the loan, the second member is what has to pay the entire loan. That means you have two responsibilities here. You have individual responsibility of your loan and you have a group responsibility of the entire loan also. This is what is called as joint lending group. Joint lending group, so that the responsibility or the liability is completely on the group, on individual also. This is loan first, that was saving first. There are smaller nuances, not a bigger difference. Smaller nuances here, there is an agreement with the individual that they are taking responsibility of their own loan and also of the group. Here, it directly goes to the group. It's in the name of the group. This ways you share the liability. Both ways you can say group liability exists. Yes, definitely. This is why you should know the limit. Microfinance, they used to ask. We are talking about this because this information you should know. Banking, as out of all the economic sectors, banking is the most important because as per the exam, banking is general awareness. You have a lot of dealing with the banking system, so you should know how the banks work. What is loan activity, what is regulation, who can take microfinance, all of these activities, cooperative banks, the public payment banks, small finance, everything. In fact, one step ahead. Since in the last 5 years, a lot of public has shown interest in, especially after pandemic, they have shown interest in the capital markets. So retail investors have picked up a lot of money in shares, bonds, and even in the last 2 years, futures and options. So that means it's general awareness. You should know what the world around you, what it is doing. This is why there were 3 questions on financial market last year. Before that, there were 2 questions from financial markets, 2 questions from banking. This is a general awareness sector, banking and agriculture both. This is why they keep on asking these questions. The second step I was telling you is beyond banking structure, they have gone to payment systems and capital markets. They asked last year UPI, which all countries can use UPI, and they asked a question between RTGS and NEFT. Before that, ATM operations, check operations, all of these things, NPCI, everything has been covered. We can say banking was all the more important from 15 to 20 because banking had a problem of NPA. So every year there was one NPA related question. That was a current development. But static wise also, if you see 2010 onwards, maximum questions come from banking, capital markets. I hope joint lending group is clear. Joint lending and self-help group. Now these small nuances of joint lending, self-help group is again, this is the other category, 4 categories which are included under others. And finally, this is the weaker sections. Weaker sections, what all is included? Since weaker sections has a 12% priority sector loan limits, who all are included under weaker sector? This is what is priority sector loans. Now, what is the type of priority sector loans and what exactly was in news? There are 7 different ways of doing priority sector loans. Last year, they changed the regulation with respect to this particular body. For an activity which is called as on lending, NBFCs and housing finance corporations, there is a 5% cap that you can give them loans which they will give it further. They have added a third body which is the National Cooperative Development Council. This NCDC has been added this year. This was not included in on lending. The limit remains same, that is 5%. So now what are the 7 different models under which you can do this lending? There are there are 7 models, what exactly the lending happens. One by one, what exactly is the meaning of this? First is direct lending. Direct lending is bank giving a loan. Bank giving a loan to a particular sector which has been classified as priority sector. The second is securitization notes. What do you mean by securitization? Securitization was the crux of 2008 financial crisis. Securitization also is mentioned in the Indian economy in the context of IBC or asset reconstruction. What is the meaning of securitization? First, I'll tell you securitization, then I'll tell you related activity of asset reconstruction and securitization, the SARFAESI Act, and RBI is also involved there. What happens in securitization is, bank has made a loan, and bank could make number of loans, say, all given to housing. Housing which they counted under priority sector. Now, can bank create an investment security on the back of this particular loan? Creating a security which is backed by an asset so that people invest in this particular asset. This was called as the mortgage-backed security in 2008 financial crisis. What happened in 2008 financial crisis were banks sold their loans to an investment company, and investment company bundled these loans together, and on the back of these loans they created a financial security which could then be sold to number of investors. That means on the back of particular assets, I have generated a security. This is what is called as securitization, where I create a financial security over a particular asset so that there is certain amount of interest in that security. That means इस loan को मैंने अब mobile कर दिया. People are investing in the loan, not only my exposure. Now the people who are investing in the loan have exposure to this loan. Whenever the loan will keep on paying the interest, the investor on the back of that interest will get their payments. The loan defaults, the investor loses money. So in the case of securitization, the bank will bundle up the loans and create a security over it. This security is being invested by other banks. If the underlying loans are priority sector loans and bank B has invested in a security on the back of priority sector loans, this will also be counted as PSL for this bank. Securitization of priority sector loans is also counted as priority sector for the bank who's investing in it. The loan has the investment since I made in this loan. I also have to face the risk of the loans because underlying loans get bad, I will lose my money. Underlying loans keep on making payments, I will keep on generating returns. So what happened here was, this particular bank, on the basis of its loans, generated a security which was called as, this process is called as securitization. So if I securitize the priority sector loans and other banks invest in it, this will also be counted under priority sector loans. Another reference to securitization, this happens. Is this clear? Securitization, what is happening? Sure. The second thing which we added here, where the securitization is mentioned. If the bank has a bad loan, how does the bank solve that bad loan? If a bank has a bad loan, that means the repayment is not happening for more than 90 days, or even before 90 days, if the repayment is not happening, how will the bank recover value? This is what is called as the process of. Now resolution has two major steps which the Indian market offers. One resolution is asset reconstruction company, and the other resolution is now through an act, market-based auctions, which is called as IBC, Insolvency Bankruptcy Code. Now what happens in this resolution? Resolution means I'm trying to recover value from my bad loan, whatever value I can recover. Now in the initial step, the resolution can be done by the bank itself, but the problem with the bank is bank does not have the expertise to recover value. Bank expertise was only to judge the risk and recover money from the risk whenever the risk was taken. But this recovery of the company is not something which the bank can do. This is why what the bank does, whenever there is a bad loan, this bad loan I can't recover on my own. I will give this bad loan to a company which is asset reconstruction company. 2005-06 onwards, asset reconstruction companies were given licenses in the countries to operate as NBFCs, not under the RBI Act, but under the Sarfazi Act. 200 crore rupees is the starting capital and a 15% capital adequacy ratio. Asset reconstruction companies can be registered. They can be both public and private. This bad loan will be taken by the ARC. In return, the ARC is going to pay them the money. That means if the loan was of 100 crore rupees, I was able to sell this loan to ARC for 60 crore rupees. 40 crore is the loss, or 40 crore is the haircut which the bank has taken on the loan. But still it was able to recover 60 crore. Now this bad loan which they have taken for 100 crore, ARC is going to recover value out of it. How does ARC recover value for it? ARC can have a separate company to do that, or ARC can have its own vertical which manages it. There are two functions here. One is buying the loan at a particular price. This is also a particular talent. This is a skill which the company has to see how much money I can recover. Second is recovering value. First is pricing the value. Second is recovering that value. In terms of pricing, it's the function of ARC. In terms of management, it is the asset management company. It could be the same company or it could be a separate company also. This is called as the ARC AMC structure. They try to recover value. Now the problem that happens in this is, if this asset reconstruction company requires money to buy these bad loans, because front end it has to pay to the bank, recovery happens second. That means I'll have to be heavily capitalized. How do I generate money? What the ARCs do, ARCs have taken this bad loan. On the basis of this bad loan, ARC presents this particular to a particular investor that we are going to sell you a security receipt on the basis of the bad loan which we have taken up. Whatever the recovery will be, you will getting a return based on the recovery. In turn, you give us the money. So what the ARCs have done, the same thing which I told you, securitization happened of priority loans. Here securitization happened of bad loans. This process was first time highlighted by the Sarfazi Act, which the term itself says securitization and asset reconstruction. Securitization and asset reconstruction of financial assets and enforcement of security interest. Enforcement of security interest means bank can take over the collateral without going to the court. Bank can force कर सकता है आपका collateral without going to the court. Earlier the court was a major problem. When it can enforce, it has now taken control over this. Once it has taken control over this, it can now securitize and reconstruct the financial asset. This is what is meaning of securitization. Issuing a security on the basis of an asset. That means the security is getting value from this bad loan. I bought it for 60 crore rupees. What if I generate value worth 70 crore rupees? You had bought 50% of this, you are going to get 35 crores. In order to create value for ARCs also, that why should I do? Because the only thing which I am getting is the margin. The RBI said you have to invest 15% of your money in these receipts, so that you have a benefit in recovering value. 15% of this value will go to you also. This is where the investor will also come in. This model did not succeed a lot in India. In order to revitalize this, government created an asset reconstruction company called the NARCL and a asset management company called IDRC, National Asset Reconstruction Company, Indian Debt Resolution Company. This company has 51% ownership of public sector banks. This company has 49% ownership of public sector banks. What exactly the function of this particular body would be? NARCL will buy the loans, IDRC will recover value. How do I create the trust? NARCL will issue security receipt from investors on the back of bad loans to raise money. Government is giving guarantee on these receipts. 35,000 crore tak ki hamari guarantee hai. If the recovery, for example, in this case, I bought it for 100 crore rupees. If the recovery is less than 100 crore, हमने issue की, for example, 70 crore की security receipt. 60 का खरीदा था, sorry, 60 crore की receipts. If the recovery is less than 60, that means my receipt has failed. If the receipt has failed, the government is going to give you the guarantee on the security issued by NARCL. अगर हमने 100 crore की receipts issue की हैं, recovery 100 से कम होता है, तो difference हम देंगे. So that there is investor interest in these receipts. This is what is your securitization process. Asset reconstruction companies are NBFCs but registered under Sarfazi. That means the sections of the RBI Act which are regulation of NBFC do not apply to them from RBI Act. NBFC in the country are regulated by RBI. There are other sector regulators depending on activity, but RBI under the RBI Act 1934, section 45 onwards इसके regulations है. Banks are regulated under Banking Regulation Act. Asset Reconstruction Company is an NBFC but is regulated under Sarfazi, registered and regulated under Sarfazi Act. All the regulations have been mentioned there separately from this. NBFC में दो तीन type के regulations है. One is RBI regulation, the other is sector regulators. And third is this type, asset reconstruction, which is an NBFC but regulated under Sarfazi. So the first step here was direct lending. Second is securitization routes. Is the securitization route clear? This is an investment. इसमें collateral क्या होगा? वो कोलेटरल ही तो गया ना उनके पास. No. Understand. When the company does not pay the loan, so what is the loan amount I am taking control of? अगर 100 करोड़ का डिफॉल्ट किया कंपनी ए ने, तो उसका कोलेटरल ही तो मेरे कंट्रोल में आएगा, which I can use as per my requirement without going to the court. पहले क्या हो रहा था? The company was going to the court to enforce its collateral के इन्हें मत दो, अभी हम रिकवर कर लेंगे. Now what we are saying is कि they will take control. Sarfazi changed it. Sarfazi said बैंक का control है, 60 days का notice देता है बैंक. If you don't give them a response there, the bank is free to use the collateral. So अगर मैंने shares के ऊपर दिया हुआ है अपना लोन, तो वो shares अब बैंक के कंट्रोल में आ जाएंगे. That means कंपनी बैंक के कंट्रोल में आ गई. अब बैंक को वो कंपनी चलानी नहीं आती है, तो वो कंपनी शिफ्ट करता है ARC को. What exactly is happening? यही तो फिर कंपनी बिकेगी कैसे? और this is the share route from which they am taking. इसी से IBC also you see. बैंक हैज गिवन लोन टू अ पर्टिकुलर डेटर, एक कंपनी को लोन दिया 100 करोड़ का, बेस्ड ऑन shares of this company, right? So my collateral is the shares which is now ownership of the company itself. So that means this shares which I have, or otherwise also whatever loan I have an option that I can convert this loan into equity. SDR बहुत सारी schemes भी दी थी RBI ने कि आप ये directly कर लो. This particular what you have is now the bad loan you have, क्योंकि इसकी वैल्यू तो अभी है नहीं. They were not able to recover. This particular thing got shifted to asset reconstruction company. तो asset reconstruction company क्या कर सकता है? Asset reconstruction company बोल सकता है कंपनी को कि let us change the conditions of the loan. आप हमें इतनी रिकवरी दे देना. Second they said management change कर देते हैं, नए किसी को ले आते हैं. Third is let us change the product line, कुछ और बना के देखते हैं. तो they are doing a lot of strategy in order to recover value. ये खुद ARC AMC करता है, वैसे AMC का काम है ये रेजोल्यूशन के स्टेप्स हैं. तो वो कोलेटरल पे तो हुआ ना. नहीं, दैट इज व्हाई विल आई, हाउ विल आई डू, व्हाट वैल्यू विल आई गेट फ्रॉम इट. कर तो ये कुछ भी सकते हैं क्योंकि अब इनका ओनरशिप है. So they can suggest steps. If they don't suggest steps, they can take over the management and do it themselves. They can sell it to a new management also. कंपनी की मैनेजमेंट ही चेंज कर देंगे ताकि उससे रिकवरी होनी शुरू हो जाए. प्रॉब्लम इज दिस मॉडल फेल्ड. व्हाई? ARC could not recover value. इन्होंने स्टेप्स अब यूज किए, नहीं हो पाया. सो नाउ अंडर IBC what the bank does is bank can sell this particular company. First bank can go to the NCLT. वो बोलेंगे हमें रिजॉल्व करना है. एंड द RBI Act 2019 it was amended. RBI बैंक्स को फोर्स कर सकता है ये बोलने के लिए कि IBC में जाओ. Earlier it was not present. Now RBI can ask the banks to go to IBC in order to resolve the debt. Now when they go to NCLT, bank replaces this particular person who had taken the debt by an insolvency professional. Or insolvency professional को they say go and find buyers of this company. Or what we say, find a resolution plan. So one way is I go to the ARC, they manage it, they give me money. They are not giving a lot of money, so this model has practically failed in the country. So under IBC is a law. Law says that anyone can trigger insolvency. The one who has taken the debt can say I can't pay. The one who has given the debt can also say he is not paying. Financial creditor, operational creditor, credit debtor, all the three can go to the NCLT and say हमसे नहीं हो रहा है या ये पैसे नहीं दे रहा है. They will place the company under insolvency professional और वो बायर ढूंढेंगे. तो अब अगर 100 करोड़ का डिफॉल्ट है, they will now say, they will conduct auction. You tell us how much you will buy this company for. अभी बहुत फेमस केस हुआ है this JP Associates. JP Associates की दो बिड थी. One was Adani and the other was this Agarwal, Vedanta. Vedanta and this, Vedanta clearly was winning the bid. Last moment पे NCLT gave it to Adani and now Vedanta has challenged this in the High Court. JP Associates का पूरा business. Earlier there were number of issues, बहुत famous cases हैं. Ruchi Soya, this refinery of oil, Patanjali versus Adani. Adani Wilmar was bidding for it. Patanjali in the last won the case. So now I'm selling the company to a new bidder. How much recovery you are going to give? B says I will give 50. C says I will give 60. 70. D says I will give 55. This insolvency professional through market auction selected D. So now this insolvency professional will go to committee of creditors जिनके पैसे लगे हुए हैं. If by 66% they say we agree to the plan gets accepted, the debt is resolved. You will all get 70 rupees according to the waterfall mechanism mentioned in the IBC. पहले किसके पैसे मिलेंगे? Mechanism decided है, mentioned in the act. Dues clear होंगे वर्कर के, शेयर होल्डर्स को, बॉन्ड होल्डर्स को मिलेंगे, शेयर होल्डर्स को मिलेंगे, गवर्नमेंट के ड्यूज क्लियर होंगे. वो पूरा मैकेनिज्म डिसाइडेड है. पैसा बट गया. इफ दे डोंट अग्री, इफ दे से नो, देन द कंपनी विल बी लिक्विडेटेड. दैट मीन्स सेल इट्स एसेट्स. दिस इज व्हाट इज द IBC. IBC ने इसको मार्केट बेस्ड प्रोफेशनल मैकेनिज्म बना दिया जहां पे ये प्रोफेशनल मैनेज करेगा कंपनी और ये प्लान लेके आएगा. एसेट रिकंस्ट्रक्शन कंपनी भी यहाँ पे पार्ट ले सकती हैं कि हम खरीद के हम रिकवर करेंगे. बट वो this model did not work well. This is why this model is more. ये भी इसमें भी बहुत issues हैं. अब IBC का amendment act भी the government is trying to bring because we said this whole thing should be over in 330 days. 650 days का तो IP professional का appointment का ही delay चल रहा है. So many cases with NCLT, number of benches are less. Second problem that is happening is these buyers are absent in India. India does not have market for second-hand assets, second-hand companies. The companies are so few in number that I don't find a lot of buyers for these second-hand companies which can actually buy and recover value. इसलिए वहाँ securitization में पैसा नहीं मिल रहा था, यहाँ पे कंपनी नहीं मिल रही, ले देके 3-4 कंपनी बचती हैं जो सब कुछ खरीद लेंगी. That also they will show an interest when they have mechanism. And when they show interest, वो 100 करोड़ का 20 करोड़ देंगे. तो ये बहुत बड़ा लॉस है बैंक के लिए. These are the few problems which are facing in this system. Initial जो cases थे उनमें बहुत अच्छा recovery था. These two cases, Bhushan Steel and Tata Steel. Bhushan Steel का default was 56,000 crore rupees. 40,000 crore में the company was sold. 50,000 crore was SR Steel. SR Steel was bought by Jindal Steel for 44 or 42. तो उसमें रिकवरी बहुत ज्यादा होगी. 56 का आपको 40 मिल गया, 50 का 42 मिल गया, वो रिकवरी अच्छी थी. बाकी सब एसेट्स में इतनी अच्छी रिकवरी नहीं आ रही है. What you are saying is ये अब बेच सकते हैं रेट को कंपनी, वो अब इनकी स्ट्रैटेजी है. ARC तो कुछ भी कर सकता है ना, क्योंकि अब उन्होंने कंट्रोल में ले लिया. प्रॉब्लम इज इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज इतनी है नहीं कि वैल्यू रिकवर हो जाए. वो तो फिर अब राइट ऑफ, मतलब बैंक को तो फिर पूरा करना ही पड़ेगा ना. अगर लिक्विडेट हुआ तो 100 करोड़ के 10 करोड़ मिलेंगे, तो 90 करोड़ तो राइट ऑफ ही हो गया, एज रिटर्न एज लॉस. ARC is different from IBC. There are two processes for resolution where securitization can play a role. Yes. अब सारी चीजें की चेंजेस, अब इस समझने के बाद की चेंजेस समझ आ जाएंगे, वो पढ़ने की चीज है. Direct lending is clear, securitization note is clear. The third is direct investment or outright purchase. Now one by one I'll draw everything here. You just understand from these 7 how it will happen. First is bank is giving out a loan. Second is bank has given out loan, 2-3 loans. On back of this loan, bank has created a security and another bank is investing in this security. This is securitization note. Investment is happening. Third is direct assignment or outright purchase. Bank has given this, make this loan. Bank too says, I am going to buy this loan from you. Take it off your books. I'm going to outrightly buy the loan from you. Every loan responsibility is now mine. Outright purchase. They made a loan, they are buying the loan, they are buying. So one way of PSL, another way of PSL, and third way of PSL, buy the loan, don't do the loan. Fourth, interbank participation certificate. Interbank participation certificate is when bank issues a loan and then goes to another bank. Do you want to share this loan? I have made loan of 50 crore rupees. Do you want to share some of this loan which I have made? We are going to share all responsibility. Loan outright पहले हो चुका है. Once I have done it, now do you want to participate in this loan for a particular percentage here? This percentage, if they participate, this will also be counted as priority sector. Direct securitization, direct buying and participation once the loan has been made. Then it's priority sector lending certificate. What happens in priority sector lending certificate? Bank has made a loan and they have crossed their target. They have made 50% priority sector loans. The extra 10%, they can issue a certificate which can be bought by another bank. In this case, I am only buying the PSL loan target. I am not buying the loan. That means underlying loan does not come to me. Here, loan is my responsibility. Here, through the security, loan is my responsibility. Here I am buying it, loan is my responsibility. Here I am participating in a particular percentage, loan is my responsibility. Here, there is no responsibility which you take. You only buy because someone has done extra. I set the target 50%, 40% for you, they did 50%, you did 30%. So they wrote on a piece of paper, 10% extra I am selling for a price. You want to buy this, you will have to buy this for a price without taking the responsibility of the underlying loan. So you just done whatever less you had. For that less, you will have to pay a price. That price is the market price depending on demand and supply of this certificate. This is what is called as underlying loan will not change. It's just like saying two people, A was said you have to study 5 hours, B also has to study 5 hours. A has done 8 hours and B has done 1 hour. A can issue certificate of this extra 3 and B can buy it to show that it has completed. But the underlying R's do not change. The study still has been done by A. It's just that the obligation gets completed because you are getting certificate for someone who has done extra. The obligation gets completed from someone extra without taking the underlying loan. You will have to pay a price for it. Then there is an on-lending and co-lending model. This is what was changed this year. What happens in on-lending? Bank does not want to give the loan itself. Bank has given the loan to NBFC. NBFC has given to the borrower. That means intermediary has given this loan here. This intermediary is now the on-lender of the bank. Who can make this on-lending? NBFCs, housing finance companies, and third, the National Corporation Development Council. This was added this year. Earlier it was only these two. How much maximum you can do this way is 5%. Responsibility is entirely of the NBFC. This is on-lending. Let someone else lend on your behalf. Third is co-lending, where bank came together with another bank to make a loan. It's slightly different from participation. Participation with the loan already had been done. Here we are coming together and then we'll make a loan together. This is co-lending. Bank can co-lend with another bank, bank can co-lend with NBFC. Co-lending को ही syndicated loans बोला था UPSC ने 2 years back. ये काफी सारे borrowers को मिल के आपने एक loan लिया. Syndicated loans. That asked this question. But there was some anomaly in that, they had to cancel it. Now all of them 7 are making steps how NBFCs happen. Or sorry, priority sector lending. Direct lending, securitization, outright purchase, banking certificate, lending certificate, on lending and co-lending. On lending regulation was changed this year. This is why all 7 here. Who all can do it? These 7 type of activities. This is your applicability matrix. Yes. Which one? This you just refer to which one is allowed for which type of bank. What is the 5th one? ये तो आना चाहिए, तो बेसिक प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर लेंडिंग सर्टिफिकेट पढ़ते ही हैं क्लास में. सिक्योरिटीज कैसे होता है? अंडरलाइंग एसेट नहीं है ना उसमें. सिक्योरिटाइजेशन में तो अंडरलाइंग एसेट है. आपने कोई एसेट खरीदा जिसकी वैल्यू कहीं और से आ रही है, तो उसके अंडरलाइंग है ना. सिक्योरिटाइजेशन वुड ऑलवेज बी ऑन एन एसेट. मीनिंग ऑफ सिक्योरिटाइजेशन इज this financial security is backed by an asset. This is securitization. आपने इस एसेट को सिक्योरिटाइज कर दिया. क्यों किया? इसमें अब बहुत सारे लोग इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं, इसमें नहीं कर पा रहे थे. यही तो 2008 फाइनेंशियल में क्राइसिस में हुआ. बैंक लोन्स बेच दिए सारे इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक्स को, उन्होंने सिक्योरिटीज इशू कर दी. सिक्योरिटी पहले बनाई मॉर्गेज बैक्ड सिक्योरिटी, फिर एक और इंस्ट्रूमेंट बनाया, ये लोन के ऊपर था. इन्होंने ये भी कंबाइन करके एक और इंस्ट्रूमेंट बना दिया, कोलेटरलाइज्ड डेट ऑब्लिगेशन. सेकंड स्टेप ऑफ सिक्योरिटाइजेशन. सो दिस इज बैक्ड बाय दिस इज बैक्ड बाय. ये दोनों क्यों बनाए? ताकि हम बहुत सारे इन्वेस्टर्स का इसमें पैसे लगा सकते हैं. वो नहीं है, उसमें बैकिंग नहीं है, उसमें बैकिंग नहीं है. यही दिस इज द डिफरेंस. 7 डिफरेंट है, मतलब सब में कुछ डिफरेंस है. दिस नॉट द सेम. उसमें ये नहीं है पीछे. उसमें आई विल टेल यू व्हाट इज द केस. What happens in PSL certificates? You've not heard of other efficiency certificates also. Perform, achieve, trade, PAT scheme, or carbon trading. It's everything the same. Carbon trading, perform, achieve, trade, everything the same. What happens here? What's the target for priority sector loans? 40% of your net bank credit. Whatever total loans you've done, out of that 40% should be priority sector loans. Consider Bank A has made loans of 50 crore rupees, its net bank credit was 100 crore. That means extra 10 crore loan it has made. Its total loans were 100. It has made loans to priority sector of 50 crore. That means extra loans which it has made priority sector was 10 crore. Another bank B had 100 crore rupees as its total loans, but priority sector it could do only 30 crore rupees. That means it has a shortfall of 10 crore. What this bank is doing, this bank is saying, because I've done 10 extra, I am issuing a certificate that I have plus 10 on my priority sector. The loan does not change. Loan to mere books pe hai 50 crore. Now this bank is saying, I can buy this certificate. This certificate will have a price. What will decide the price? There can be so many banks which are selling certificate for 10 crores. That means there could be a supply of these certificates, and there will be so many banks who have a, depending on demand and supply, this will have a price. So now when RBI every quarter or every year when it comes to check, what is your priority sector loans? Bank B says 30 करोड़ के तो हमने loans किए हैं, 10 करोड़ के हमने certificate खरीद लिए. Shows my complete वो. B also shows complete. Why? It has 40 crore or 50 crore loans, but 10 crore it has given as certificates. So that has to be subtracted from my priority sector because I achieved extra, but I sold the extra achievement. I sold the extra achievement for a price. Doesn't mean the loan book got reduced. Loan is still 50 crore. My excess achievement goes to someone else for a price. That means they have a benefit. If they don't make it, they have a loss. So ideally problem what happened was, if PSL targets are not met on these 6 steps, certificates were not present till 2016. Till 2016, what they used to do, whatever the shortfall you have, the shortfall you will have to deposit in some of the accounts which RBI is asking you to do. When they deposit that money in the account, RBI used to give them very less interest rates. Loan was going at 14%, 13%, 10%, 7%. RBI said, bank rate -2 पे हम पैसा लेंगे. So one such type of account they said, Rural Infrastructure Development Fund under NABARD. ऐसे ऐसे हम 4-5 फंड बताएंगे, इसमें डाल सकते हो. But the interest on this was very low. That means those who have a shortfall are getting a bad deal. So they said, okay, forget this. You can still do it, but you can also go for a market-based mechanism. Shortfall में आपका थोड़ा खर्चा होगा इसको सर्टिफिकेट खरीदने में, but interest का इतना नुकसान जो हो रहा था वो नहीं होगा. This is what is the market-based mechanism as opposed to an administrative mechanism, though the administrative mechanism still exists. This is what is priority sector loan certificates. I hope it is making sense. What is the difference? Loan shift नहीं हुआ है. Certificate of achievement has been given. These are the what all companies, banks are allowed and not allowed. These are the certificates, 4 types of certificate. One is for agriculture. So if you have a shortfall in agriculture, you can buy the agriculture certificate. That is small and marginal farmers. Third is micro enterprise, and the fourth is general. 4 types of certificates are issued depending on which target you have a shortfall in. This is the features where they are traded and where they are not. This new addition which they added last year was, in order to increase the bank loans to particular districts which have low penetration, they said if you make a low credit flow per capita PSL here, the weight on the loan I'm going to add as 1.25. That means your loan will be given extra weightage. It will not be counted as 1, it will be counted as 1.25. So that it comes to districts which have poor penetration. This step got added last year. In 2025 they made this change where low credit flows and this. This is what I was talking about, the interest. If the shortfall is less than 5%, you will get an interest rate of bank rate -2. If the shortfall is 5 to 10%, you will get bank rate -3. This is the interest rate which the banks will receive when they put the money in the account. What type of account? RIDF or any other accounts. ये बैंक के लिए प्रॉब्लम है कि लोन 7% में गया, यहाँ पे बैंक रेट 6% माइनस तो 4% ही पैसे मिले. बेटर इसके हम सर्टिफिकेट ही खरीद लेते हैं, वो लॉस तो नहीं होगा हमारा. These are the interest rate which the bank receives on making those particular payments to this. This is what is your shortfall penalties. Now second is prompt corrective action. I'll just tell you the ratios here and which ratios have been in news. You know what are Basel guidelines? What do Basel guidelines refer? This is one topic which they have not yet covered. That asked only one question in 2018 on capital adequacy. But liquidity coverage ratio, net stable funding ratio was a lot in news in the last 1 year. This topic also can be asked. What happens or what is Basel norms? Regulation with respect to what? Why? The whole point is banks are taking deposits from people and are making out loans. This is the activity. The banks, central banks world over, or even global regulatory bodies are of an opinion that this particular loan always has a risk. If it has risk, how will you create trust in your depositors to give the money to you? This risk has to be maintained, or this risk has to be covered. How do you cover the risk? First, what are the type of risk? One is called as market risk, the other is called as operational risk, and the third is called as credit risk. What is the meaning of credit risk? What if the money does not come back? The person who has given the loan or has taken the loan is either not willing or not capable. Both ways, my money gets lost. I have made an investment in the security. The person who has issued is stopped paying the money. That means when your loan or investment fails, this is what is your credit risk. What is market risk? In fact, these type of risk is what I discussed yesterday in RBI also. Remember I told you there is realized equity. Realized equity to cover for risk of RBI. RBI also has these risks. So in order to cover this, I told you, they maintain a contingency risk buffer, which is contingency fund plus asset development fund, जिसमें उनको पैसा रखना है 6 plus 1.5%. पहले हम रिस्क को मेजर करते हैं, उसके गाइडलाइंस हैं. Based on that, I keep money to cover the risk. Just like RBI kept this risk, economic capital, if you remember the last class. Similarly, banks also have to maintain capital to cover the risk. Where credit risk is loan or investment fails. Market risk is when the market conditions change. What market conditions could change? For example, RBI changed the interest rate. Or there is sudden shortfall in liquidity. Equity market fell. There is FPI has outflown from the economy. The number of things which are outside your control. Loan and investment was your risk. You had given it. But there are certain things which can change which were not your particular problem. Market ke dynamics badal gaye. For example, Iran and US war happened. US attacked Iran. Bank will have a market risk because a lot of variables outside them have changed. Inflation hit the economy. Inflation ki wajah se bahut sare issues ho gaye. A lot of people could not pay or other things change which has impact on your finances. Third is operational risk, where ideally the definition of operational risk is something which is not credit or market. What will that include? This is mostly an internal governance failure. कि आपके लोग ही corrupt निकल आए. People either did not know how to do it, or people willingly committed a fraud. This is what is your operational risk. For example, there was this bank, IDFC. IDFC bank के कुछ employees ने last 2 months, this happened in February. They had withdrawn 550 crore rupees from the account of Haryana government without the approval of the Haryana government. There were few officials of the IDFC bank, 550 crore रुपए बैंक में से government के बैंक निकाल लिए. The budget had to then clarify. This was the budget speech of the finance minister, शायद CM finance minister है. He was said कि हमारा कुछ accounts में गड़बड़ हो गई in the house, and he said 550 crore का हिसाब नहीं मिल रहा है. And then they asked for investigation. A lot of people were caught. This is what is operational risk. कि आपका पैसे, आपका internal governance failure. Internal governance failures happens because of 2-3 things. One is you don't know what the process is. Second is even when you know the process, you willingly do a mistake. This is fraud, malafide intention. It is a bona fide mistake. 3 types of a problem happen in operational risk. One is you don't know the process. आपको काम ही करना नहीं आता है. बैंक में वो बना दिया आपने मैनेजर जिसको पता ही नहीं है कि बैंक होता क्या है. This can happen. This is very easy. Because there are a lot of fraud that can happen in the exam system. Exam system नहीं भी तो अंदर भी ऐसे बहुत लोग हैं जो बहुत चेंज नहीं है तो उन्हें बैंकिंग का काम ही नहीं समझ आता है. तो सेकेंड टाइप ऑफ प्रॉब्लम इज दे मेड अ मिस्टेक. बैंक अकाउंट से विड्रॉ 1 लाख करने थे, वो गलती से एक 0 ऐड हो गई बिकॉज ऑफ सो मच प्रेशर, 10 लाख चले गए. दिस इज अ लॉट ऑफ प्रेशर ऑन बैंकिंग एम्प्लॉइज बिकॉज द रिक्रूटमेंट इज वेरी लेस. सो द मिस्टेक कुड बी not a fraud but a genuine mistake. And third is there is a fraud committed. These are operational risk. इसके लिए governance system बनते हैं, checks and balances होते हैं, internal governance mechanisms, accountability strong. Why? Because you will never be able to find the difference between the 3. How would you prove this with this with this? This is what happens in UPSC also. If you fail the exam, how would you prove where were you? Either you were here, 1 साल से you were not doing anything, or you made a bona fide mistake, or you were reading but you were not understanding. तीनों फेल होंगे. ये बैंक में भी होता है. So operational risk is this. RBI also has market risk, has operational risk. This is why RBI ka coverage is what I told you yesterday. You keep this money, then give the surplus. Now if you have all this risk, how will you protect yourself from the risk? Basel or Bureau of International Standard is a body which has membership of central banks all over the world, situated in Switzerland, Basel, Switzerland. They have a Basel Committee for Banking Supervision. They said, have certain norms which all banks should follow. Have certain norms which all banks should follow, which provide confidence to its depositors that the bank is safe. What measure can provide confidence? This is what is called as capital. That means whenever you have risk, bank has enough capital to protect against the risk. How much capital you should have? How does the bank have capital? This is what is, and from the difference bank will keep on adding to its capital, and bank also has started with its capital. कुछ उसके पास पैसे हैं, कुछ उसने रिजर्व रखे हैं, कुछ वो पैसे कमा के रख रहा है. तीनों चीजें उसका कैपिटल बनता है. This depositor knows if the loans are going to go bad, I am protected by the capital of the bank. Question is, how much capital is safe enough? They said, what capital is safe enough? We will identify it through a ratio, which is capital adequacy ratio. Capital provides the first line of protection against any risk, whether it is RBI or normal banks. For RBI, I told you economic capital framework. Capital plus reserves plus realized equity plus revaluation reserves. जिसमें से realized equity होनी चाहिए 5.5 or 4.5 to 7.5. This gives confidence to everyone RBI is safe. Rest RBI can transfer surplus. Similarly, banks are safe. How do I know? They have to maintain capital adequacy. How much? What is capital adequacy? They will have to maintain some capital as a percentage of their risk-weighted asset. That means whatever loan or investment you have made, that particular loan or investment will have to be assigned a weight depending on whatever risk it carries. Higher the risk, higher the weight. So if a loan of 100 crore rupees has been given and it has been given to someone who has a poor credit rating, the loan risk would be 0.8, 0.9. If it is credit-worthy customer who has already been repaying his payments and has a strong income, that will have 0.1, 0.2. इसके rules होता है. RBI provides the rule which instrument should be rated how. The banks follow those rules for assigning risk depending on some common features of those assets. What is the capital in what form you have to keep? That means the capital which you have to have is to be a percentage of risk-weighted asset. The Basel committee said it should be 8%. RBI said 9%. For different categories of banks, I can have different. For example, small finance bank have 15%. The All India financial institutions have 15%. 15% of asset reconstruction company. Depending on my risk structure, I can assign more values, less values. For bank, they assign 9%. Now, when 9% I have to assign, that means I will calculate my risk-weighted asset first. 9% of that is minimum capital. This capital has to be kept in what form? This capital has to be kept in two forms. One is called as Tier 1 capital and the other is called as Tier 2 capital. The difference between the two is Tier 1 capital is something which is the solid capital of the bank which is always available on call. ये पैसा हमारे पास है, it can be calculated, it can be always be paid. Tier 2 capital is something which is difficult to calculate and difficult to liquidate. That means it is with the bank, but the exact figure is not available and it is also difficult to liquidate in order to put them to use. What is the difference classification? This is also news. Tier 1 के ऊपर अभी HDFC Bank, the director, one of the directors resigned from HDFC Bank on Tier 1 capital. That was 81 bonds. Tier 1 capitals are of two types. One is common equity Tier 1 and the other is additional Tier 1. What is common equity Tier 1? It includes the capital of the bank and it includes reserves, especially the statutory reserves. Now what is this statutory reserves? Section 45 or I think section 25 of the RBI Act 1934 says every bank has to put 20% of its profit in its reserve till the time reserves match its capital. Capital is the starting capital of the bank. 500 करोड़ रुपए आपके पास होने चाहिए बैंक शुरू करने के लिए. 500 crore rupees you have. From the profits, 20% of the profits have to be put in statutory reserves till the time your reserves are equal to your capital. So automatically ये दोनों बड़े safe money है, बैंक के पास हमेशा available होगा. This is the safest form of capital. What if bank wants to raise more money beyond its capital? उसने shares देके पैसे ले लिए, उसके बाद अगर और capital raise करना होता है, it can do it from preference, non-cumulative shares and AT1 bonds. What they do here is, these two types of instruments, one are shares and the other are bonds, they raise money on them, but the return on them first, these instruments are perpetual. That means there is no end date. Shares की भी कोई end date नहीं है और bonds की भी कोई end date नहीं है. Whatever money we are taking on them, how much money we are going to return, we have a discretion when we can stop the payment. AT1 bonds पे I am going to give you a perpetual interest, but if I face a problem, I can stop my payments. On preference, perpetual preference non-cumulative shares, I am going to pay a dividend from my profit, but I can stop the dividend whenever I want, and whatever is non-cumulative dividend, हम dividend जब भी देना बंद करेंगे, ये नहीं है कि अगले साल का dividend आप add कर लोगे कि वो भी बच गया था. The dividend is not going to accumulate. In some years, if we don't pay you, you can't demand it from us. For example, in year 1, I had given you a dividend of 20 crore rupees. In year 2, I had given 25 crore. Year 3, I did not give you anything. Year 4, I did not give you anything. तो इन दोनों साल के आप मांग नहीं सकते हो बाद में. That is non-cumulative perpetual preference shares. This type of money is considered less safe as compared to this type of money. तो मैंने preference shares और AT1 bond से भी पैसा raise किया after this. This tier 2 capital is safe, less safe than tier 1. How much I have to keep in tier 1 is 7%, which is 5.5 here and 1.5 here. AT1 bonds is an important instrument. नाम भी आ जाए तो you should know tier 1 का part होता है additional tier 1. This is called as common equity tier 1 and this is called as additional tier 1. इसमें दो ही type के instrument होते हैं. This preference shares, perpetual preference, non-cumulative and AT1. Both are perpetual instruments. No end date and I can stop my payments whenever I feel I have facing a problem. I can buy back the thing also. That means AT1 bond अगर मैंने 100 करोड़ के issue किए 100 करोड़ देख के मैं वापस खरीद भी सकता हूँ. Both shares and AT1 bonds I can buy back whenever I want. Initial timeline है 3 साल या 5 साल के बाद आप कभी भी खरीद सकते हो. What is tier 2 capital? Tier 2 capital is difficult to estimate and more difficult to liquidate. That means second line of defense. First line of defense is easily available capital. What is second line of defense? What will I include here is the bank, if you know, whenever there is an NPA, bank has to make some provisions in order to cover for the loss. Whenever there is an NPA, post 90 days, bank has to keep certain money apart, which is called as the loan loss provisions to cover for the bad loan. There are some ratios also given 15%, 25%, 40%, 100%. Time के साथ रखने होते हैं as per the RBI. All of these loan loss provisions are part of tier 2 capital. The bank has kept money aside to cover for the loss arising from NPA. This is what is called as loan loss provisions. Similarly, the bank can have hybrid assets. What are hybrid assets? Bank is holding a particular security, that is a bond, which has an option to convert into equity. वो कितने की होगी इक्विटी वो मुझे नहीं पता अभी. ये कितने बैड लोन्स होंगे उतना कितना प्रोविजन है, दिस इज ऑल्सो कॉन्स्टेंटली चेंजिंग. दैट मीन्स दिस इज वाई दिस इज डिफिकल्ट टू एस्टिमेट एंड डिफिकल्ट टू लिक्विडेट. वो रिजर्व ज्यादा पक्का है. This is not. This is why only 2% of the money here. The third type of asset which is in tier 2 is what is called as revaluation reserves. What are revaluation reserves? Whatever asset bank is holding, say gold or bonds, the value of this gold or bond is consistently changing over a period of time. I was holding the bonds or gold, I bought it for 80 rupees, today it is 90, tomorrow it is 70. That means these value as per the market is constantly changing. Sometimes it is plus, sometimes it is minus. Whatever plus minus is happening on this goes in my revaluation reserves. So that means whatever the bank has to maintain as capital, percentage of risk weighted asset has to be maintained in two forms, tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is common equity tier 1 and additional tier 1. 5.5, 1.5, 2. Is this clear? This is the first, capital adequacy ratio. The second is, Basel 3 added this. Basel 3 said, this capital alone was not enough to save the bank from the 2008 financial crisis. That means bank needs more capital. How will that come? They said create a capital conservation buffer. What is this capital conservation buffer? Percentage of your risk weighted asset you have to keep in the form of tier 1 capital apart from the 8 or 9% which you had kept there. 2.5% extra tier 1 capital has to be kept as a percentage of this risk weighted asset as capital conservation buffer. Third thing they added, so that means 9 to wo hai 2.5 extra as part of capital conservation buffer. Third thing they added, you should also protect yourself from bad times by doing extra in good times. The dialogue here is that the roof is repaired when the sun is shining. The roof is not repaired when it is raining. So when you have good times, then keep extra money apart from these two also. This is what they called as counter-cyclical capital conservation buffer. 2.5% of risk-weighted asset, 0 when the time is bad, 2.5 when the time is good. That means when you are making too many loans, you should keep 2.5% extra. 9, 2.5, 2.5 only when you have credit growth. Otherwise it will be 0. RBI has accepted all three. Counter-cyclical also, but when the times are good, not when the times are bad, 2.5. Apart from that, to cover for the off-balance sheet problems, you have to maintain a leverage ratio. This leverage ratio is, you have to maintain tier 1 capital as a percentage of total assets. Not risk weighted, but total assets. This ratio they said should be maintained 3%. Finally, for liquidity, so 4 things: capital adequacy, capital conservation, counter-cyclical and leverage ratio. Leverage ratio and these two capital buffers are used in prompt corrective action also. Beyond that, economies might face problem of liquidity. What problem of liquidity they might face? 2008 financial crisis when hit, a lot of banks were short on their liquidity. How do you maintain liquidity? 2 ratios you have to maintain, and last 1 year, most of the banks have complained about this ratio because the RBI operationalized this ratio last year. HDFC Bank के previous chairman ने पूरा article लिख दिया express में कि you are punishing us too much by asking us to maintain too many ratios, which is controlling the bank's business which they can do. What liquidity you have to maintain? In order to maintain short-term liquidity, you have to maintain this ratio. This ratio was controversial. Liquidity coverage ratio. Liquidity coverage ratio says whatever is your net cash flows calculated for 1 month, average net cash flows कि हमारा इतना इनकमिंग है इतना आउटगोइंग है, 10,000 करोड़ रुपए का प्लस माइनस होता है बैंक में 1 महीने में, उतना ही पैसा you have to maintain in high quality liquidity assets. This ratio has to be 100%. If the bank has cash flows incoming and outgoing of 10,000 crore rupees, that means 10,000 crore rupees has to be locked in high quality liquid assets. This is why the banks were complaining. SLR maintain करें, CAR maintain करें, और अब LCR भी maintain करें कि cash flows के ऊपर हमें lock करना है पैसा. But the banks wanted it to, or the RBI wants it to do, so that they have enough liquidity. Another liquidity which they want them to maintain is for long term, which is called as net stable funding ratio. That means for 1 year, estimate how many loans you require. Estimate 1 year liquidity requirement. How much money do you require? that 1 year liquidity requirement, you should have sources available for it. So if I know in 1 year I need 1000 rupees, I should know from where I will get that 1000 rupees. Sources available to money required for 1 year should be 100%. This is for long term, and this is for whatever your 1 month cash flow is, that should be locked up in high quality liquid assets. Banks are complaining over this. बहुत बड़ा पैसा रुक रहा है यहाँ पे. Now, what if banks don't maintain these ratios? I have some ratios which said, one was capital adequacy ratio, capital conservation buffer, counter cyclical capital conservation buffer, leverage ratio, and liquidity coverage and net stable funding ratio. RBI ने सब banks के ऊपर लगा दिया है this Basel 3. This is all Basel 3. What if banks don't follow? That means, what if the bank health deteriorates? How will the RBI supervise this deterioration of bad health? Why do I need this? Because I don't have to wait for them to enter a crisis. I will have to monitor them and see how their health is deteriorating. Based on this, I have to give certain corrective steps. This particular mechanism is called as prompt corrective action. This prompt corrective action exists for banks, exists for urban cooperative banks, and exists for NBFC. 3 framework hai. I am going to monitor your health. If your health is not working as per the standards I have set, I am going to take corrective steps. That means, in order to monitor their health, I have certain threshold based on certain parameters. Threshold for them, threshold for them. Based on which threshold you are, threshold 1, threshold 2, threshold 3, I am going to take remedial steps. There are some remedial steps that are mandatory and some which are common or discretion based. इस पूरे framework को we called as prompt corrective action. Earlier for urban cooperative banks, it used to be called as supervisory action framework. Now all the 3 we have given a common name, but the threshold and the steps are different. Risk indicators are different. Based somewhere on these only, not something beyond this. I'll show you 1 or 2. What there, rest you will read, you will understand. Prompt corrective action for banks was introduced in 2004. Changes were made in 2017. NBFC was introduced in 2021, changes made in 24. Urban cooperative banks introduced in 2020, changes made in 2024. But these terms are covered in newspapers on a daily basis. This is what is your applicability. One is for banks, the other is for NBFCs, third is for urban cooperative banks, and banks also include foreign banks. What is not included? RRBs. RRBs have their own framework by NABARD. Payment banks, small finance banks, and UCBs in tier 1. We have 4 tier urban cooperative banks. Less than 100 crore deposits wale UCB tier 1 hai, base layer. What are the thresholds? First threshold for banks is capital to risk weighted asset ratio. Threshold 1 would be less than 10.25 but greater than 7.75. Risk category 1. Similarly, I have risk category. Banks have 3 indicators. First indicator is capital adequacy ratio. Second indicator is asset quality. Asset quality for a bank is net NPA ratio. What is net and gross NPA? Gross NPA is loans not paid for 90 days. Principal interest not being paid for more than 90 days. I adjusted for the provisions which I have to make. This is net NPA. What is the NPA ratio? NPA ratio is the NPA loans upon the total asset. The net NPA as a percentage of total loans will give me the NPA ratio. NPA ratio less than 9 hai, greater than 6 hai, risk category 1. Between 12 and 9, risk category 2, more than 12, risk category 3. Third is tier 1 leverage ratio. I told you leverage ratio, tier 1 capital upon total asset. This is leverage. 3 indicator per measurement hai for banks. Similarly, 3 indicators for UCBs, 3 indicators for NBFCs, but it is slightly different. We don't use leverage ratio for them. We have added here profitability, profit on asset. I've given all the indicators here. I hope prompt corrective action you'll be able to solve, liquidity coverage ratio and all. This is banks. I think iski next slide hi. This is UCBs, urban cooperative banks, 3 thresholds: capital adequacy, net non-performing asset, and profitability. Indicators are different. It was called as the SAF, the supervisory action framework. Now we don't use that term, we use the prompt corrective action. Now this we have completed banking. Regulation, you just have to see the basic regulation. I've not told you, rest we have done here. Another topic we'll cover is agriculture. This is based on broadly what I've read from the newspaper in the last 2 years. Agriculture is mostly covered in Indian Express. 2 reporters cover it, or 2, not just reporter, one is a reporter, the other just gives opinion. The opinion which he had in 2010, he's still recycling the opinion and giving the same. Ashok Gulati and Harish Damodharan. Ashok Gulati is important for our mains because his opinion is mostly limited to the mains related topics, analysis is very less. Harish Damodharan is analyzing the Indian agriculture scenario both domestically and internationally. In the last 2 years, whatever topic he's picked up, I divided the topics into four broad categories. First is the general cropping pattern, which crop is being taken under MSP and what is the consumption pattern of the country. Second pattern is dependent on this, the ethanol conversion, the economics of ethanol, and how certain crops are now converting apart from sugarcane. The third thing he has talked about is the impact of trade deals. He's talked about mostly US and how US 4 components which were creating problem for us. One was corn, second is soybean, third is cotton, fourth is dairy products, and the fifth one is animal feed related. There is a problem with soybean because soybean, after its cultivation, when it is changed into oil, only 18 to 17% comes as oil. 80% जो de-oiled cake होता है, that is used in animal feed. The issue with that is, if we bring in maize from outside, which is genetically modified, and from the maize when we convert from ethanol, there is the distillery substrate which is left back, which is also animal feed. So if that DDGS import is allowed, which US was pushing India for it, US तो चाहता है मेज सारा आ जाए इंडिया में, ethanol भी बने उससे और DDGS भी animal feed में use हो. We have not allowed ethanol because we believe we ourselves have a lot of sources for ethanol. So we have not allowed the import for that. But DDGS का import allow कर दिया है, जिसकी वजह से soybean farmers have a very big problem that oil conversion will give us, but the remaining I will not be able to sell to animal feed. The second thing is we are allowing jowar, red sorghum, to be imported from US, which also has a huge relevance for animal feed. The fourth thing here, so first is your trade related things, second is your consumption patterns, the third is your ethanol related, maize and all, and the fourth thing which he's talked about is the technology developments in agriculture. He's talked about 3 things. One, he's talked about some techniques. He's talked about directly seeded rice, he's talked about alternate wetting and drying, and he's talked about system of rice intensification. UPSC has asked about system of rice intensification. The second thing he's talked about is directly without plowing sowing of wheat, zero tillage wheat, and certain technology changes where genetically engineered crops are giving certain benefits. He's talked about genetically engineered maize, genetically engineered rice and wheat, and in order to do this genetically engineering, we need a molecular scissor which is called as Cas9. Cas9 की एक problem है that Cas9 and Cas12, whatever these enzymes are, they are not patented in India. So we have to buy their license, which adds significant cost to it. This is why we have developed our own traditional method, which is grown from a particular traditional variety and is acting as a molecular scissor. वो थोड़ा ज़्यादा effective भी है. उसकी ribosome की chain छोटी है, better भी है. So he's talked about these type of developments in the last 2 years. So I've given you in this notes here, whatever we can discuss, I'll just tell you. Otherwise you have 4 heads where you can read, which can help in building some information, direct or maybe शायद indirect question comes up because agriculture is an important topic. First, what are the crops which are given MSP? There are 23 crops which are given here. There are 3 categories of it. First is you have 7 cereals. That is rice, this sorghum was red sorghum की ही import की बात है. Then you have pearl millet, bajra, finger millet, ragi, maize, wheat and barley. 7 cereals. This is also important to the 2-3 questions have come on MSP. You have 5 pulses where you have Arar, moong, urad, chana and masoor, which have been given MSP. And the third is oil seeds. Three categories mostly: cereals, pulses and oil seeds. Groundnut, sunflower, Niger seed का question आया था. Safflower, soybean, sesame, rapeseed and mustard and toria जो इस rapeseed mustard से ही आता है. These are 8. वो 22 इसलिए हैं क्योंकि तोरिया का अलग से नहीं होता. तोरिया का rapeseed और mustard seed से निकल के आता है MSP. Commercial crops are 3. One is cotton. Cotton, guys, there is a huge procurement done by Cotton Corporation of India. Second is jute, and the third is copra, dried coconut. Coconut promotion scheme has been launched in the budget, where the finance minister said India is the largest producer of coconut, which is actually not true. Largest producer of coconut in the world is Indonesia. Largest producer by number of coconuts produced is India. But nowhere in the world the number gets counted, it's only by weight. Million metric tons is the criteria used. But she said it, we are the largest producer of coconuts in the world. We are going as per her statement. She said it in the budget. The clarification here is, it's based on the number of coconuts being produced, not on weight. On weight it is Indonesia. In fact, weight wise it is Indonesia, Philippines and India. Number wise it is India. And if I count coconut oil, largest is Philippines. Coconut oil, largest producer is Philippines. Coconut, largest producer is Thailand. By number, coconut producer is India. Some of the crops which have been talked a lot in the news. अब बताओ क्यों है वहां पे कोलकाता में? सारा जूट प्रोड्यूसिंग एरिया वहीं है. जूट को सपोर्ट क्यों चाहिए? Why do you think jute needs support? जूट का तो very clear case it needs. Jute has absolutely no use. What is use of jute? मतलब हमने फिक्स करा रखा है कि एग्रीकल्चर कमोडिटी जूट बैग्स में जाएंगे कि शुगर को ट्रांसपोर्ट करने के लिए, राइस फीड को, तो हमने वो लगाया 5%, 10%, 20% जूट में ले जाना है. वो लगाना बनता थोड़ी है. वाई? जूट हैज अ रिप्लेसमेंट, प्लास्टिक. प्लास्टिक बैग्स मोर ड्यूरेबल. वाई वुड यू यूज जूट? तो जूट का तो यूज केस ही बहुत कम हो गया, अंटिल अनलेस यू वांट सस्टेनेबिलिटी. दिस इज वाई विजन आईएएस का मटेरियल मिलता है जूट बैग में, प्लास्टिक में नहीं मिलता. इजिली सस्टेनेबल ना, प्लास्टिक मिलेगी नहीं. बट प्लास्टिक का काम बहुत है ना. प्लास्टिक का बहुत काम नहीं, प्लास्टिक डिग्रेड ही नहीं होगा. तो पर है प्लास्टिक ड्यूरेबिलिटी और यूज केस आसान है प्लास्टिक का. प्लास्टिक की बोतल में पानी पी रहे हो. कंप्लीट एमएसपी क्रॉप लिस्ट 23 odd crops. One thing to remember here, sugarcane is not MSP. Sugarcane is FRP. Sugarcane is backed by a law. Both sugar and sugarcane are essential commodities. Sugar has a minimum selling price, so as to promote healthy competition amongst the mill owners. Sugarcane, so that a remunerative price is given to the farmer. ये सारे price कौन decide करता है? This price is decided by the government. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs decide all these prices, whether it is 23 odd crops MSP and the FRP for sugarcane. This sugarcane is backed by law, which is Essential Commodities Act of 1955, the Sugarcane Control Order of 1966, which has decided everything. Sugar, not just the price, marketing is also controlled. Where sugarcane will be sold to what particular, there is linkage which is done, bounding of the mills with the farmers. Everything here is controlled, even import-export. Import quotas, export quotas, everything is fixed by the government. In fact, sugarcane का इतना ज़्यादा control है, how much sugar the mills will sell, that also has a quota. The Ministry of Commerce sets the quota, how much every mill will sell every month. तो उनका opening closing stock भी government बताती है. Everything of this activity is controlled under this, where sugar plus sugarcane both are essential. Sugar का है minimum selling price. It's only for sugarcane. Why, you tell me? Sugarcane, what type of a raw material it is? Sugarcane given to the mills, which will go to the market, sugar plus byproducts. I'll show you the byproducts also. जैसे बाय प्रोडक्ट से बहुत कुछ बनता है, बैग फॉर जनरेशन, molasses for alcohol and ethanol, the press mud for biogas generation, lot of byproducts. Sugarcane is one particular crop which has zero waste. Everything is used. Crude oil to different story. How you can compare sugarcane with crude oil? Every drop is important, okay. Sugarcane and mills. The problem with this is that it's a raw material which loses weight. And second, whatever is produced from this, 70 to 80% of the cost is the cost of sugarcane. So in this type of a market, what can happen? It's a product which is going to, that means, what is the possibility of storage? Whatever you do, kuch bhi karo, ye suk jayega. Right? Once you do that, once you know this problem, and second, you know whatever they are producing, 80% cost is sugarcane. That means there's a huge chance that you will have exploitation of the. If I'm producing of 100 rupees, that means 80 rupees should go to the farmer. This is the entire cost. There's no other cost beyond this. So that means, what will the mills try to do? Farmer is selling a product which he is eager to sell, and all of the product is creating value for you. That means you are going to depress the prices for him. If you keep on depressing the price for him, will he do this crop? If you won't do this crop, you will have a problem that your sugar will now have an import dependence. So how do you protect them? The government said, first, under sugarcane control order, share profits with them. I will not share profit because I will show a huge cost. Government said, forget sharing cost, you pay them a fair and remunerative price. Problem with fair and remunerative prices, how do I know what profits I'll make? But I'll have to pay the good price beforehand. Both of them are problematic. Sharing profit said, cost I will increase. Sharing price means, I have given price front end. How do you know what business I'll do later? What if the competition is so huge, I don't sell sugar, but I'll have to pay this FRP which government has set. So the mills face losses. What is the answer to this? You should instead share the Thailand, Brazil, Australia, all of them, which big agriculture producers share revenue with the farmer. Whatever I will get 70% from sugar, 80% from its byproduct, share with the farmer. This is the more sustainable. This is called the revenue sharing formula. Niti Aayog recommended this, Rangarajan committee recommended this. Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, they use this. They don't pay as per FRP or SAP. Actually, they pay FRP only, but by sharing revenue they pay. Burden unke paas kam ho jata hai. This is the reason why sugarcane is a heavily controlled market, both in terms of marketing and price. This is your procurement of cereals, pulses, oilseeds by government agencies. Which crops do you think is the maximum? If you take 2003-24 data, which crop is taken the maximum? Why? MSP to sab pe. Stable. What is stable? See, there are 5 procurement mechanisms. I'll just give you a broad overview of this. You see the logic behind it. First, MSP does not have a law. MSP crops. What is the idea of MSP first? If the market price fails, no, distress is only because of market failure. Other failures, there is insurance from Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Yield loss, weather related issues. There are 2 schemes for insurance. One is the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana and the other is the weather based insurance, revamped weather based insurance. In weather based insurance, if the weather conditions change up to a particular limit, you will be paid insurance. In Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, it is yield which is checked. Average yield se agar yield kam ho gayi to aapko insurance cover karta hai. This covers market failure where the price fails. If the price fails, the implication is next time the person will not grow this crop. In order to give them a minimum, the government decides MSP. CSCP calculates MSP. The most important factor in calculation is input cost, though there are other variables also. Input cost mein also there is a problem where it is A2 plus FL and C2. That is mostly for mains, less likelihood of asking in prelims. Once the MSP is decided, it is a market failure, market price failure. You also have to procure the crop. Now this procurement is what tilts the balance in the favor of rice and wheat. First is I will procure only when the market price fails. That means the price should actually fail. But there is another function which the government does in order to provide food security. What they do is they have to run a targeted PDS system under National Food Security Act 2013. So what they need is, if I have to distribute food grains from FCI to states to then to beneficiary, this FCI also has to get the food grains. This procurement has to happen. Why? Because I have to distribute it under NFSA. So if I have NFSA distribution, which particular crop will I take more, which will have to distribute? PDS में what should I distribute? Sources of carbohydrates first, glucose वही जिंदा रखेगा पहले. That means the procurement happens of. Now you understand tilting the balance in favor of these two crops. Why? Because these two crops are to be distributed under. Carbohydrates I try to distribute first, then I will try to diversify and distribute protein. Protein is pulses. But if most of my expenditure is done on rice and wheat, will I have money for pulses? Why? Because this is only for. So two mechanisms exist here. First mechanism is called as centralized procurement, where the procurement happens through FCI, and this procurement for rice and wheat is open. That means if the farmer is bringing fair average quality norms, whatever quantity the farmer is bringing, everything is taken. Wherever we go, whatever kgs they bring, subject to fair average quality norms, it's open. That means I'll take your entire quantity. That means if I do too much of rice and wheat, why too much of rice and wheat? Because the beneficiaries are. So most of the expenditure happens here. Centralized procurement, FCI procures, distributed to the states. In order to make the efficiency better, we said, why not allow the states to procure directly from the farmer at MSP? This is called as decentralized procurement program. 97 this got introduced. But this centralized and decentralized, cost is completely taken up by the 2.25 to 2.3 lakh crore is what government spends on this. Both here directly FCI, here give money to the states to procure. Both ways procurement happens of rice and wheat. This is why MSP, which was given for market failure, now becomes regular because the procurement is happening for. That means if the price fails of other crops, other cereals, other pulses, oil seeds, and also the commercial crops, what will happen to them? For them, the government has another scheme. So centralized, decentralized is for rice and wheat. For them, they have another scheme which is called as price support scheme. This was mentioned under Pradhan Mantri. In PM Asha price support scheme, they said, we are going to procure pulses, oil seeds and copra. They do cotton also, Cotton Corporation does it. Cotton mein government ka seedha fayda hai. Because if I procure at MSP, I can always sell it to the people, textile, a lot of other things. It's a cash crop, it sells. Other crops, it's not that easy. So for these three, that is pulses, oil seeds and copra, they have a condition that if the market price fails, how would I know market price fails? Whenever a state government makes a request to the government that these three crops have failed in our state. That means production has failed, the price has failed. Or the production is more, price has failed. If the production is more, price has failed, farmer have to sell for less. State government will notify the center. The center will ask its agencies, whether it is NAFED, the small farmers agriculture consortium, and will ask them to procure. They will procure these three up to 25% of the production of the state. When they will procure up to 25% of production, automatically price of the crops will go up. The farmers will get the protection. So for other crops apart from rice and wheat, they have a price support scheme under PM Asha, which says 25% procurement done by the center when the state says the market price has failed. But since the government spends most of the money here, they have very less money for this. This is why very less procurement for pulses, oilseeds and dried coconut, that is copra. Government does other procurement also. This is for horticulture crops. This is called as the price stabilization and market intervention scheme. What happens in market intervention scheme? Understand this carefully. This is another mechanism procurement. There are total 5 procurement. 2 for PDS, 1 for MSP, price support, and 2 for different categories. 1 is for price support, the horticulture crops which are not MSP covered. These 3 exist only for MSP. This exists for non-MSP. What happens here is, price of the crop fails. How do we know? 10% production has increased or 10% price has gone down. 2 things happening. 10% the production has increased or 10% the price has gone down. When this 10% changes happen, the center will ask the state or will procure on its own. Can ask the state or can procure itself also. The state is responsible for selling the produce. Whatever the profit happens goes to the state, but if there is a loss, the center will share the loss 50 to 50. In some states, they have mentioned, the loss sharing will be 75-25. When they will procure, at what price they will procure? They will announce a market intervention price. But this price is announced only when price fails. MSP was announced before the season. MIP is announced once the price fails, but is for non-MSP crops. 4 mechanisms: centralized, decentralized. These 3 are for MSP. Market intervention scheme for non-MSP. All the 4 to protect the farmer. The 5th one is called as price stabilization fund. What happens in price stabilization fund? Consumers in my country are getting high prices for the product. कुछ products में बहुत volatile है. Pulses, tomatoes, onions, potatoes. Now government has said कि processed dal or processed atta, Bharat dal, they've added that too also. That also we will sell. Why? Because consumers are facing higher prices. On what? Tomato, onion, potato, pulses, and now processed wheat and वो दाल कौन सी चना की. We are going to sell under the Bharat brand name. Why? Because consumer are facing high prices. अब जब ये चारों चीजें करनी है, where is the money? They establish a price stabilization fund where center is going to procure all of this from the farmer, whether domestic or imports, and use this money and give it to them. There's no discount. Discount is for them. We will buy at whatever you are selling at. The money difference between the two will be borne by the center through price stabilization fund. This is done under Ministry of Consumer Welfare and Public Distribution. Tomato, onion, potatoes. It started with onion and tomatoes. They added pulses and potatoes also, and then covered last year Bharat आटा and Bharat दाल. इन सब के पैसे कहाँ से आते हैं? मार्केट से हम लेंगे और आपको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करेंगे through various channels. So the government is procuring 4 for farmer, 1 for consumers. From this you would understand the procurement picture and the states from which procurement happens. Cotton farmers also can face market price failure. वहाँ भी तो production बढ़ सकता है. हेडक्वार्टर से क्या मतलब? क्यों होता होगा? सबसे ज्यादा कॉटन कहाँ पे है? नहीं, इंडिया में तो है. कहाँ पे है? अब इंडिया में भी नहीं है. इंडिया का भी लास्ट 2 ईयर से बॉलवर्म इन्फेस्टेशन की वजह से कॉटन कम हो गया है. इनफैक्ट आई शो यू कॉटन का इंपोर्ट बढ़ गया है. You can see the procurement pattern based on these 5 which I've told you. This is the stock in central pool. Mostly it is wheat and rice. The top rice producers, states, and top wheat producers. This is I think 2023-24. 24-25 में शायद राइस का प्रोड्यूसर चेंज हो गया है. It's not West Bengal, I think it's Telangana. This is 23-24 coming from Indian Express. This is why मैंने exactly वो data जो उसने represent किया newspaper में I shown you that. You want to verify again, you verify again. This is wheat procurement from 2 states. Punjab and Haryana give the maximum. Then it comes from MP, UP, Rajasthan. This is wheat procurement. MP used to be one of the largest states for wheat. If you see the previous number 19, 20, 20, 21, the wheat number is highest here. पंजाब के बाद MP में आ रहा है. Decentralized procurement. Shivraj Singh Chauhan won 4 elections only because of procurement techniques. Rice procurement mostly comes from Punjab and Haryana. Rice wheat के दोनों के यही हैं. Green Revolution plus the changes. This was with respect to the share of agriculture to rural households. How many households in the rural area they practice agriculture? This type of a statement has also been asked in 2019 in prelims based on the situation assessment survey. This is 2023-24 only. 21-22, but 21-22 के बाद डेटा आएगा किस वैल्यू से? ब्रॉडर तो यही रहेगा ना. This is the household consumption expenditure survey. This has explained the Angel's curve, the Angel's law. Angel's law said if the income of the household will increase, they will spend less percentage of their income on food. This data shows how rural India and urban India both have reduced their consumption of food. The percentage cereals, you can see how it has gone up. The maximum gain has happened in the increase in consumption of milk. Milk is increasing. This is increasing. Egg, fish and meat. Poultry sources are now more than what the cereal sources are. 3-4 observations that have come. Cereals is going down. Milk plus egg, fish, meat is increasing. Vegetable is increasing. And this processed food is significantly increasing. Both in rural India and urban India. Milk of India is always the largest producer. Problem is productivity. This is urban India, uska number kam hai. Urban India, cereals are drastically 25, 23, 15 to 9. Pulses, milk, vegetables. Poultry sources, egg, fish, meat 6 to 9 and milk 18. Processed food significantly 13 to 21. 3 major changes. One is the change in cereals, which is reduced. The second is improvement in the poultry sources. And the third is reduction or increase in beverages, processed food. These are the 5 observations which is given. Share of cereals and pulses has reduced. Share of spending of milk has increased. Fruit, vegetable has increased. Consumer going to egg, fish, meat. Fruit, egg, fish, meat and milk is increasing. Cereals and pulses falling. And finally, percentage of expenditure done on beverages is increasing. Processed food. This is the agriculture trade. Which are the goods mostly India is sending outside? Maximum is rice. Agar basmati, non-basmati दोनों add करो. If only basmati and non-basmati is separate, then it's marine products. Marine products, basmati rice, spices, buffalo meat, coffee, fruits and vegetables, tobacco and so on. Larger idea should know what exactly is happening. Import items. बासमती एक्सपोर्ट्स गोइंग टू व्हाट कंट्रीज? ये इसलिए भी प्रॉब्लम है, वो वेस्ट एशिया की लड़ाई में सबसे ज़्यादा एक्सपोर्टर्स बासमती का ही इशू आ रहा है. बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द बासमती एक्सपोर्ट्स सऊदी अरेबिया, इराक, ईरान, यूएई एंड यमन. फोर्स मेजोर कल परसों इंडियन एक्सप्रेस की फोर्स मेजोर डन बाय द बासमती ओनर्स बिकॉज एवरीथिंग इज गोइंग देयर. नॉन बासमती इज स्टिल स्प्रेड. नॉन बासमती इज मोस्टली गोइंग टू द पुअरर कंट्रीज इन अफ्रीका. दिस इज द डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ the production pattern. These are the items which are mostly imported. Highest is vegetable oils. Which ones? Vegetable oil, pulses, fresh fruits, cashews, spices, beverages. Raw cotton increase हो रहा है काफी because of the last 2 years problem. Yes, palm oil. This is what I am coming to next. This is what is the pattern in the last 5 years economic survey, which talked about India being the second largest agriculture produced by value, but the exports are not reflecting that. Because of the productivity issue. Input cost in India being high for most of the production. This is import of pulses, the pattern in the last 5 years. This is import again of the numbers from the countries. 3 things. Trend of pulse import, the number of different pulses, and this is the countries from which we import. This is import of vegetable oils. Vegetable oils की 3 major आते हैं बाहर से. One is palm, the other is soybean and the third is sunflower. ये 3 countries हैं. Palm oil के लिए we get most from largest producers, Indonesia and Malaysia. Soybean we get from Argentina and Brazil. Argentina, Brazil से लेते हैं, US से सबसे कम है. US wants to push this. US is mostly GM crop. Sunflower oil is taken from Russia, Ukraine and Argentina. Romania से भी थोड़े एक बार एक साल में आए हैं. These are the countries from which. So 3 things: patents, the country from which you are imported, and the import trend. This is edible oil. Largest edible oil production in India is which oil? It's mustard. Mustard ही होगा क्या होता है? It's mustard. 3 things which we produce significantly: mustard, soybean and groundnut. The most imported are palm, soybean and sunflower. Next is this. This I'll tell you in 5 minutes. Iska I'm given a lot of data because fertilizer production was talked in last 1 year the maximum. Urea production, urea ke from where it is brought in and from where the raw material is also brought in. This is the regulation for urea. First, fertilizers 3 which are covered under 3, not 3, more than 3, which are covered under the price regulation. They are urea and non-urea ones. Combination of all the 3, that is nitrogen, sulfur. These are called as complex fertilizers which have different ratios of. अभी बता रहा हूँ सब कुछ, just wait for 5 minutes. The pricing regulation is different for these specialized fertilizers, whether it is biofertilizer, liquid fertilizers, water soluble fertilizers और nano fertilizers. Special fertilizer पे कुछ subsidy नहीं है. UP government last month gave a notification के ये specialized fertilizer बेचना ही नहीं है. It is unsubsidized, not, these are specialized. No regulation on them, regulation on them. For urea, government sets the market price, and the difference between what the government sets and what is the delivered cost by the manufacturer. Rail gate पे कितना price पड़ता उनको, difference is paid as subsidy to the manufacturer. So for urea, price is fixed, subsidy keeps on changing depending on what the delivered cost is. This is what is the price mechanism for urea. Marketing of urea, 50% of marketing is controlled by government. State ko government, the center government decides the quota for every state, how much fertilizer will go, which is based on the district demand. 50% of urea controlled like this. How is urea manufactured? There are 3 feedstocks or 2 major feedstock. One is natural gas and the other is naphtha. Most of them were natural gas because the government made a regulation change. Last year, they made a change where they started making from coal gas. Talcher, Odisha में they have established a urea plant which is going to make it from coal gas also. Coal gasification से पहले भी बनता था, बंद कर दिया था. Natural gas is cleaner, but natural gas, because 56% of our natural gas comes from outside. This is why this coal gas plant has been operationalized last year. For these fertilizers, we have nutrient-based subsidy. What exactly happens in nutrient-based subsidy? Price is free, subsidy is fixed. How is the subsidy fixed? It is based on per kg nutrient. Per kg nutrient we decide the subsidy, but the price the manufacturer can produce on its own, importer can produce on its own. Since the price was free, price was increasing too much, the subsidy remained fixed by the government. The fertilizer became unaffordable. The government in 2024 said, the price will now be reasonable. That means there is a limit on profits which the manufacturer or the importer can make. There is a limit on the profits which the manufacturer can make. This is reasonable price setting. So on paper it is free, but the government controls the price through profit, 8%, 10%, 12%. This is what is nutrient-based subsidy. Subsidy fixed, price changes, but reasonable restrictions on price. Urea, the price is fixed, subsidy changes. These are the 2 mechanisms. The problem with these fertilizers is India is short on production of everything. Urea, most of it is domestically produced, but we also have imports, and imports of urea are licensed. Imports of urea are licensed. That means only licensed players are allowed to import. There are only 3 players which have been given this license. Final price is fixed. Difference between the consignment cost and the final price is paid by the government as subsidy, because final price is only one that is given by the government. Domestic and import दोनों आता है. इसका raw material सारा बाहर से आता है. Raw material we have use of ammonia. Ammonia comes from outside. I've give you the source also, because iska supply chain I think is important. Last 2 years, significant supply chain of fertilizer is being talked about. DAP, MOP and all these fertilizers. DAP is significantly imports. MOP though is complete imports. We have absolute zero production. DAP का production is also very controlled. That is very less. Why? Because DAP का raw material नहीं है. DAP में 2 raw material लगता है. One is phosphoric acid and rock phosphate. Both of them are not present here, which we import. Mostly Russia, Ukraine से आते थे दोनों. इसलिए इसका domestic कम है. MOP में तो the potash is completely absent. ये तो completely fertilizer import होता है, इसका production है ही नहीं. Sulfur also, I'll show you the sources. Sulfur also we get from outside, which is required in most of these complex fertilizers. Pricing, marketing, and its supply chain with respect to what exactly the product is coming for. This is what is important for these fertilizers. इसी पे सबसे बड़ा impact आने वाला है. 3 things: food, fuel and fertilizer, which is the biggest impact of this US attack on Iran. Food, because it is an impact on fertilizer and fuel. Fuel पे directly 90% India का fuel वहाँ से आता है. Production and imports, you can see there is significant production but we still get imports. ये production इसलिए इतना अच्छा नहीं है क्योंकि इस production के पीछे भी imports हैं. 2 critical material required for urea production, that is its feedstock, is natural gas, 56% coming from outside, and second is ammonia, which also comes from outside. This is for urea, comes from these countries. China से significantly था 23-24 में, but China has created a problem for us on both urea and imports because of our the friendship with US and Israel. So this import has significantly reduced from them. Picked up from other countries: Oman, Russia, Qatar, UAE and Saudi Arabia. This is why I said the supply chain is an issue, because सारी countries में problem है. इसलिए यूरिया का issue आएगा. Yes, वो उससे भी और वैसे भी. ये दोनों यूरिया पे भी import में problem है, specialty fertilizer, DAP and all पे problem है. I'll show you this. This is diammonium phosphate. Diammonium phosphate, this is what ये control कर लिया था इन्होंने. 22.87 in 23, 8.43 in this. China stopped DAP coming from India. DAP का हमारा एक और अच्छा सोर्स है मोरक्को. मोरक्को के पास रॉक फॉस्फेट बहुत है. Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Russia, Jordan, Australia, Egypt, these are some of the countries. Russia, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Morocco. This is for DAP. This is the rock phosphate which is required. UPSC asked a question on rock phosphate in 2018. They said, which of the following fertilizers can be delivered through irrigation? Fertigation से क्या क्या हो सकता है? Fertigation से rock phosphate नहीं हो सकता क्योंकि rock phosphate soluble नहीं है. Rock phosphate and phosphoric acid के reaction से ही what we get is diammonium phosphate. Maximum is with this country. China, Morocco, इसलिए specialty fertilizer सबसे ज़्यादा वहीं से है. Imports of MOP, this is completely everything from outside. Russia, Canada, Turkmenistan, Jordan, Israel. This is from where we get potash. These are the inputs which I have given you, the import sources. Potash comes from Turkmenistan and Belarus. Natural gas for urea comes from Qatar, UAE, Oman. Qatar से सबसे ज़्यादा गैस आती है इंडिया की. Qatar, UAE, Oman. Diversification targets हैं US, Australia. DAP finished. We have already discussed. Ammonia comes from Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the raw product which I said. Just have a broad overview. ये agriculture में सारे small facts which can be framed as statements. Phosphoric acid, Jordan, Morocco, Senegal, China, Tunisia. Rock phosphate we've discussed. Sulfur is Oman, UAE, Qatar. Sulfur सबसे ज़्यादा मिलता है crude oil refinery से. So crude oil refinery जहाँ पे है वहाँ से आएगा. This is why these countries. This is which I've given some information on water soluble fertilizers, their efficiency and how they are used. Price comparison, nutrient take. Coal gasification, yes. ये वाला product is increasing. एक बार 2 minutes more, I'll just tell you the broad, you can read. That is the increase in maize production. This particular impact has created an impact here. Uses of maize, new variety of maize I have discussed. One more thing. These are the sources from which ethanol can be produced as per the national biofuel, which was amended in 2022. Biofuel, I'll give you what exactly is done here. Biofuel has 4 sources. This is and fourth is modification or carbon capture. Food, that is cellulosic biomass. This is the most advanced development. Food mein what exactly has happened? These are all which you can read, which is allowed in India. Food mein recently what has happened? Sugar से सबसे ज़्यादा production था इंडिया में. Maize plus other grain based बढ़ गया है last 2 साल में. Maximum production was sugar based, sugar से directly आ रहा था. इसके starch से निकल रहा है, उसमें processing के बाद भी सबसे ज़्यादा इनसे आ रहा है. Which has a impact on feed and also food security concerns. I'll show you the data also. Pricing mein what is the regulation on ethanol? First, ethanol is under GST. Ethanol is not under the previous mechanism, 5% GST hai. Second thing, ethanol pricing mein there is administered, there is free. Government sets the price for ethanol coming from molasses, ethanol coming from C heavy, B heavy. C heavy allowed नहीं था, B heavy allowed था पहले. C heavy allow किया 2018 में, and sugarcane juice. These two are decided by government. C heavy molasses and B heavy molasses. These 3 are decided by the government. Rest, food plus 2G sources. This is market decided, mostly oil marketing companies decided. This is what is the pricing of ethanol. Sources are all this. Sugar based, direct sugarcane and molasses. Biomass, 2G. Sugar containing crops, starch based materials. Damaged food grains, industrial waste, 2G. Biological sources, aquatic algae, seaweed, 3G. Oil based feedstock, energy crops and urban waste. ये 2018 का national biofuel policy है. PIB gave this article. This is the ethanol supply by feedstock. You can see in the last 2 years, maximum is coming from grain plus surplus rice. C heavy, B heavy और cane juice ये कम हो गया है. Maximum is coming from here. Then 3 technologies I told you: direct seeded rice. The second is system of rice intensification and alternate wetting and drying. Alternate wetting and drying is most effective because rice is a significant source of methane. Rice को जब हम पूरा flooded रखते हैं, so there's a lot of bacteria and other microorganisms which get released, which produce a lot of methane. So what this technology says, and this technology has been talked a lot in the newspaper in the last 1 year, says कि alternate wetting drying में पानी बढ़ाओ और फिर पानी कम कर दो एक level तक. उससे the microorganisms will not be able to survive and the methane emissions are going to significantly reduce. This technique is successful for that only. Rest 2 का और भी फायदा है. Direct seeded rice का water भी consumption कम है और labor cost भी less है. System of rice intensification have all the benefits. Alternate wetting drying is done mostly for that. I have compared the 3 also based on this particular whatever is talked about. Zero tillage wheat mein how it is done. GM crops and GE crops. This is what GM crop is when you have bringing a particular mutant from outside. GE is when you make a change within the same, nothing is brought from outside. The difference between GM is addition and there is modification within the same, where you are making the same product act in a different manner. That is genetically engineered crop, which does not have the same biosafety protocols as genetically modified. इसमें कोई भी requirement चाहिए नहीं. Why this was in news? Because 2 varieties of rice, sambal and one more, they was genetically engineered. So what is the benefit of genetically engineered? I've talked about what is the difference and these 2 categories of rice. The Samba Masuri and the cotton dora sanelu, ये dry और saline conditions के लिए थे. Genetically engineered crops हैं दोनों. Modified नहीं है, engineered है. Regulatory status. This is what I was talking about, the TNPB. This is a replacement of Cas. This is a hypercompact genome editing protein because Cas9 and Cas12 है, ये दोनों का IPR बाहर है, बहुत costly है IPR. This is why वी हैव दिस हाइपर कॉम्पैक्ट जीनोम एडिटिंग प्रोटीन. प्रोसेस क्या होता है, एक सीजर होता है और एक आरएनए, दो प्रोसेस स्टेप्स हैं. जस्ट लाइक इन कैश दे हैव द सेम हेयर. द गाइड आरएनए navigator and the molecular scissors. It is being driven from an extremophile bacteria which is radiant, protected from radiation. This was a significant achievement. Sugarcane, the three products which are produced, zero waste. One is bagasse, the other is molasses, and third is press mud. Inke uses is something I think in 2018 they also asked what is the use of molasses and what is the use of bagasse. US, 4 products I talked about. Top 5 imports from US, tree nuts, ethanol, cotton. Top exports, these products. And what is the problem with all three? This is what the top problem I talked about is cotton. कि हमने cotton import बढ़ गया, export कम हो रहा है because of the production problem. The pink worm bollworm infestation. Pink worm bollworm infestation की वजह से problem आ रहा है. One on corn, the other on ethanol, third on soybean, fourth on dairy. All the 4 issues I have discussed here. 2 more on animal feed issues, one on red sorghum and the other is the distillers dried grains with soluble. तो soybean का जो प्रॉब्लम आएगा वो मेज का DDGS से आएगा, क्योंकि जो मेज का कॉर्न का वहां से जो DDGS लाएंगे फीड के लिए, वो सोयाबीन will not be used for feed. That is what is the controversy here. This is the impact on the soybean industry and the oil concept. So all the information, this is the information from the last 2 years, Indian Express, whatever agriculture topics they've talked about. This is my email address in case you have doubts. More information, I'm still topics to be covered. Energy topics I could not cover, especially pricing of energy. The infrastructure projects, the industry significant were not covered. I'll try to upload some of this information. Most of the information this I've uploaded. I have a Telegram group by this name, if you can find it, where I've posted questions from the newspaper. Usually I do that, but now I've posted material from economic survey and also material which I'm forming like this, which I'll be posting I think in the next 10 to 15 days. You can catch this if you can. Badi mushkil se Telegram pe I don't know how it works. It's UPSC Daily Newspaper Nuance is the name of the channel. The link shows this. If you're not able to find it, you have this email address. I'll share the link there. Where from October till now I framed questions from daily newspapers and also some content related to economics such as past year questions or even all of this information plus more information if I'll get, I'll add it here. Thank you. आप पूछो क्वेश्चन क्या था?
The issue with most UPSC aspirants is not effort, it is foundation. A strong foundation means 3 things. Learn in the right sequence so subjects reinforce each other. Apply early through answer writing and testing. Correct continuously through proper diagnosis and feedback. This is what the GS Foundation course at Vision IAS is built around. Connected GS coverage, not isolated subjects. Early writing and testing, not last-minute panic. Diagnostic test analysis with clear corrective steps. Current affairs organized into usable themes for prelims and mains. Regular mentorship to prevent drift. Effort is common, structure is rare. If you are serious about UPSC, start by getting the foundation right. Upcoming classroom batches: Karol Bagh 9 March 11 AM, 13 March 8 AM and 24th March 5 PM. And GTB Nagar batches for English 17 March 8 AM, 25 March 6 PM. And for Hindi 16 March 11 AM. For more details, visit our website or call us on the given numbers.
यूपीएससी 2027 का लक्ष्य जितना बड़ा है उसे पाने की योजना भी उतनी ही स्पष्ट और संगठित होनी चाहिए। विजन आईएएस लेकर आया है क्लासरूम फाउंडेशन कोर्स 2027 के 12 से 14 महीनों का एक ऐसा सुव्यवस्थित कार्यक्रम है जहां आपकी तैयारी एक अनुशासित और वैज्ञानिक ढांचे में आगे बढ़ती है। यहाँ क्लासरूम लर्निंग के साथ साथ आपको मिलता है लाइव और रिकॉर्डेड सेशंस का विकल्प, जिसे आप अपने व्यक्तिगत ऑनलाइन पोर्टल के माध्यम से कभी भी और कहीं भी एक्सेस कर सकते हैं। तैयारी के सफर को और भी प्रभावी बनाती है हमारी व्यक्तिगत क्लासरूम मेंटरिंग। हमारे एक्सपर्ट मेंटर्स नियमित मार्गदर्शन और स्मार्ट स्टडी मैनेजमेंट के जरिए आपकी तैयारी को एक सही दिशा और गति प्रदान करते हैं। शैक्षणिक दृष्टिकोण से देखें तो यह कोर्स मुख्य परीक्षा के सामान्य अध्ययन के चारों प्रश्न पत्रों, सीसेट और निबंध का व्यापक कवरेज सुनिश्चित करता है। विषयों की समसामयिक समझ विकसित करने के लिए मासिक करंट अफेयर्स मैगजीन और रिवीजन क्लासेस के साथ साथ पीटी 365 और मेंस 365 की विशेष कक्षाएं भी इस कार्यक्रम का अनिवार्य हिस्सा हैं, ताकि स्टैटिक और करंट अफेयर्स के बीच एक सटीक संतुलन बना रहे। तैयारी की गहराई मापने के लिए निरंतर अभ्यास अनिवार्य है, इसलिए डेली असाइनमेंट और साप्ताहिक मिनी टेस्ट के साथ साथ मासिक प्रीलिम्स और मेंस टेस्ट के माध्यम से आपकी प्रगति का निरंतर आकलन किया जाता है। इस कार्यक्रम की शक्ति है हमारी प्रतिष्ठित ऑल इंडिया टेस्ट सीरीज, जिसमें प्रीलिम्स के 35, मेंस के 30, सीसेट के 25 और निबंध के 5 टेस्ट का समावेश है। साथ ही संधान पोर्टल पर 25,000 से अधिक प्रश्नों का विशाल संग्रह आपके अभ्यास और विश्लेषण को और भी सुदृढ़ बनाता है। अब समय है अपनी मेहनत को एक मजबूत, संरचित और निरंतर प्रक्रिया में ढालने का। विजन आईएएस के साथ जुड़े और यूपीएससी 2027 की अपनी सफलता की राह को एक स्पष्ट दिशा दें।
Prelims is in 3 months. This is where preparation shifts, not from studying to stopping, but from expanding to consolidating. At this stage, what matters most is strengthening core areas, fixing weak zones, analyzing mistakes deeply, stabilizing mock scores, refining your attempt strategy. That is exactly where the Luxure Prelims mentoring program plays a decisive role, offering structured direction, performance correction, and continuous guidance when execution matters the most. Starting from 23rd February, Luxure supports this critical phase with a focused revision roadmap, personalized tests and competitive quizzes, 25,000 plus curated Sandhan questions, data-driven performance analytics, mentor guidance till the exam. Luxure is not about studying more, it's about executing better with expert guidance. To know more or register, visit our website or call us on the given numbers. Are you ready to face prelims head-on? Because prelims is not just about knowledge, it's about performance under pressure. That's where Abhyaas, the All India Prelims, GS plus CSAT mock test comes in. Designed as a true exam simulation, Abhyaas recreates the real UPSC. Prelims experience the same pattern, the same time constraints, and the same intensity. It places you in a national arena, competing with aspirants across India, backed by an all-India ranking that reveals your true standing. Attempted by 1 in 3 top 50 rankers, Abhyaas has become a trusted benchmark for serious aspirants. With detailed post-test analysis, live discussions, and complete syllabus coverage in both English and Hindi, it ensures your preparation is not just extensive, but exam-ready. 3 full-length offline simulations will be conducted across 100 plus cities on 5th April, 19th April, and 10th May. From 9:30 am to 11:30 am for General Studies, that is paper 1, and 2:30 pm to 4:30 pm for CSAT, that's paper 2. Challenge your preparation, test your performance. For more information or register, visit our website or call us on the given number.
All serious aspirants are able to solve polity, economy and geography questions in the prelims. But when it comes to ancient and medieval history and art and culture, everyone stands on the same platform. Whether you are a fresher or a repeater, attempts don't matter here. Most aspirants end up guessing answers, relying on vague recall and finally getting stuck in a dicey zone near the cutoff. And it is exactly here where margins matter, that marks are lost or gained. To create a clear edge over the cutoff, Vision IAS Prelim SpeedUp is for you. The real challenge with history and culture is not effort but direction. Multiple sources, overlapping facts, confusing timelines and factual overload make these subjects risky. UPSC further complicates things by framing indirect elimination-based questions where partial knowledge often backfires. As a result, even well-prepared aspirants hesitate at crucial moments. Prelim SpeedUp is designed as a 20-day last-mile score booster to solve this exact problem. Instead of broad coverage, the program focuses only on high-yield areas that UPSC repeatedly asks in ancient history, medieval history, and art and culture. The emphasis is on conceptual clarity, chronology, and intelligent linkage, so facts finally start making sense together. With concept-driven classes, the course tells you what to remember, what to ignore, and how to apply. Structured daily practice and tests train your mind for elimination, helping you avoid traps and guess less. The smart source consolidated content removes the burden of multiple books and speeds up the revision. In just 20 focus classes for ancient and medieval history and art and culture, Prelim SpeedUp converts static confusion into scoring confidence. If you want to move from cutoff anxiety to cutoff safety in Prelim 2026, this program gives you that decisive edge. Join today to get this edge.
Every UPSC result proves one thing quietly. Success does not begin at the final stage. It begins much earlier, with the kind of foundation a student builds. The UPSC CSE 2025 result makes that visible again. 10 candidates in the top 100 prepared through the Vision IAS GS Foundation Classroom course, including AIR 5 in Shan Bhatnagar. That kind of result is not built on motivation alone. It is built on the right sequence, the right guidance, and the right correction. This is what the Vision IAS Delhi GS Foundation course is designed for. Concept-first classroom learning, so preparation is not scattered. Early answer writing and testing, so improvement starts on time. PT 365 and Mains 365, so current affairs become usable in the exam. And mentorship that keeps preparation aligned, focused and accountable. Because in UPSC, hard work is common. Structured preparation is what creates separation. If you are targeting UPSC 2027, start by building your base the right way. Vision IAS Delhi GS Foundation course. Upcoming classroom batches at Karol Bagh, 24th March at 5 p.m., 30th March at 8 a.m. and 7th April at 11 a.m. At GTP Nagar, 17th March at 8 a.m. and 25th March at 6 p.m. Register at our website or call us on the given numbers.